Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the concluding pair of rounds in the UKSimRacing Securities Porsche Cup Season 6, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. Indeed, today is rounds 14 and 15 of 15, as our drivers have made the way back to France for the one and only Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. Located in the remote regions of France compared to other circuits which share the international stage with it in this current decade, it is a circuit that is decorated with 17 corners and wide corner variety, with some bespoke corner sequences of its own, including the complex de l'IC, but also borrowing from other circuits around the world, including the hairpin of Adelaide and the chicanes of Imola. It is a circuit that provides a tantalising test of technical driving ability, but as well as cornering, it's also got multiple extending straights. That means overtakes are prevalent throughout, with battles under braking into the heavy braking zones on the straightaways. Alternatively, if a driver should make a single mistake for a corner, they'll normally be punished severely and find themselves losing pace in the run to the next corner, and it could lead to a too wide or more situation going on through a corner complex. But at any given time here, the kindle has been set, the match has been lit, and with our drivers now ready to go, we've got 3 championships to be concluded, including the gold and silver drivers championships, and of course the team's championship to go alongside it. Welcome to you all, and I can tell that with all the racing ready to go, you're all ready to go in at the YouTube chat. And as I do say hello there to Racing Dutch in particular, who's hoping to cheer a driver in particular to a win, and that's Luke Andrews in the silver class. Well, welcome to you all, and we get ready to go racing. In the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul at TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we're bringing you all your racing action tonight on the official live broadcast brought to you on the UKSimRacing YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com, and search for UKSR or UKSimRacing in full. But as we make our way into tonight, let's give you a reminder of the journey we've made across the globe, and we started off all the way back on the 23rd of March. It's hard to believe we are now 2 months from where we started in rounds 1 and 2 at the Virginia International Raceway. We kicked off a bang in the United States of America, and the aptly named Virginia State Circuit demonstrating the masterclass of our drivers, and we saw rivalries of new ignited in both the gold and silver classes. Perhaps the most notable one, of course, Philipp Hammer's difficult start to the season in his championship campaign defence in the gold class. But in rounds 3 and 4, we saw the rivalry between Philipp Hammer and Alex Peregrina go to an all-new high, and also in the silver class, the rivalries between the likes of Roxanne Marshall and David Biggerdike be extended in rounds 3 and 4 at Imola. Well, not Imola, I should say Monza there. I don't know why I've got Imola on the brain. But on the 30th of March there in Italy, we saw our drivers make it safely around the Turn 1 complex in each of the races on the first lap. But it wasn't just about anxiety into the heavy braking zones at Monza, but it was also about battling on the straights and into the braking zones. So the numerous chicanes, and then at the end of the day, it was brilliant racing throughout as slipstream assisted passing that led to some absolutely intense battles towards the end. Then on the 6th of April, we made our way to Belgium for the double header in the country, starting off with rounds 5 and 6 at the Circuit Zolder, and there, with its tight chicanes and rather complex sequences of corners, it was all about battling on the brakes and avoiding any particular mistakes, and a good number of drivers found themselves getting it wrong very early on a given lap, given the fact the first chicane caught them out by surprise with its highly raised curves. Then we made our way from everybody's second favourite Belgian circuit, or the home of DTM, to everybody's favourite Belgian circuit. You know and love it as the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and that is rounds 7 and 8 on the 13th of April, and we got to see our drivers there take to the venerable circuit, and many found themselves coming unstuck over the course of each and every race. But those who did not, they managed to find themselves some major points. We then had our first break week before returning on the 27th of April for our round 9 Le Mans special, and located in France at the Circuit de la Sarthe, or what's known now as the Circuit du 24-hour du Mans. And of course we've got the 24-hour Mans and Centenary coming up very shortly. While drivers there absolutely did it was the single race round, which saw the merging together of both of the sprint race and the feature race to a 42-minute thriller, and come the end of it our drivers were exhausted and the points were accrued. And then on the 4th of May we made our way to the United Kingdom for the Silverstone Circuit, and there at the home of British motorsport in rounds 10 and 11, it was fast, it was flying, it was high downforce all the way. But perhaps the biggest shock to the system was in the gold class, where you saw the championship momentum swing the other way, going back to Philipp Hammer with Alex Peregrina, the championship leader at the time, falling short in both races and losing critical points. We then had our second break week before returning for the 18th of May on rounds 12 and 13 at the Suzuka circuit, And whilst it was a post-round broadcast, it was an absolute thriller last time out, with our drivers there charging around the Japanese circuit, and one known for championship drama when it's played at the end of a season. And we saw that in the gold class, with Hammer and Peregrina coming together at turn number 1, not on lap number 1, but midway through the sprint race, and it led to Hekon Gustad picking up one of a limited number of wins in the season outside the top 2 names we mentioned. But also there we did see the retirement of Luke Andrews in the feature race, and that means it's led to the silver championship between Andrews and Marshall being wide open, and we'll come on to the specifics about that shortly. But now today it's rounds 14 and 15 here at Magny-Cours on the 25th of May, and we bring the curtain down after today. But let's talk about those championship standings then, and we started with the gold class after 13 of 15 rounds, and it is Philipp Hammer who leads the way by what is their 21 points for Team Germany over Adelaide Racing's Alex Peregrina. The gap between the two could not be greater. It's the largest gap we've seen between the championship leaders over the entirety of the season. Now, with drop scores accounted for, the advantage is in the hands of Philipp Hammer. He has the lead, and also he has the greater margin by which he can prove by. Meanwhile, Alex Peregrina will need a huge result today, and on top of that as well, he will need Philipp Hammer to drop major points in both races if he is going to become champion. But then again, we have seen drivers come back from perhaps the most unassailable of advantages, or disadvantages we should say, for the challenging contender over the course of many a UKSimRacing Championship. And could we see a miracle happen today? Well, Peregrina will think so, and Philipp Hammer will be looking to keep it calm, carry on, and just conclude the title defence. All Philipp Hammer needs to do today is finish directly behind Alexander Peregrina, and it will come to his way. But in return, if Peregrina is able to come out on top with both of the wins, then Hammer will need to be right behind him and not too far behind him, as otherwise we could see Peregrina take the championship with a very late blow. Then we have in P3 Harold Stratatis for Over Limit Racing. 9 points off of the top 2, and he could be a factor in the battle for the runner-up spot. Not eligible now to take the championship crown, but we have seen Stratatis really has gone from strength to strength this season and has proven to be able to mix up with Peregrina and Hammer at multiple places. Then Hekon Gustad a further 17 points behind in P4. The Indian Motorsport driver looking to fend off Willesee Racing's Karen Willesee, with Karen Willesee there P5 and completing the top 5, which is a mile away from the rest of the field. And right now Karen Willesee looking to try and close out a P4 finish come the end of today. Meanwhile, leading the rest of the field, Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing pick up his first podium of the season in Japan last time out in the sprint race, and on 81 points there, looking firmly in control on a P6 finish come the end. A sizable advantage over Phillips GP's Giles Phillips, who on 58 points is 10 clear of Corey Lazarus, and the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver will looking to try and conclude the championship campaign on a good note after what has been mixed results all season for the team. And Lazarus, one of 2 drivers who's really had to go through the hard moments and enjoy the positive moments. Emil Koopmans and Ricardo Jimenez complete your top 10 there, the Apex Misters and Avatar Racing respectively. And then we do have an 11-point gap to Samuel K. Sprout from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand in P11. Best of the rest there outside the top 10. And much like his teammate Lazarus, Sprout also mixed results all season and looking to try and put things behind him today and look forward to the positives of the next season and end on a high here to carry that momentum forward. Then have Alexander Wilfert from Team Germany in P12 on 16 points, 2 clear of Chris Cole for DC Sim Racing, with Lee Holmes for ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple, Joe Noon for Empire Motorsport, and Rob Zelby for Shell V-Power Race Team completing your championship standings. But as we then come on to the silver class, meanwhile, we're in the gold class. The complexion at the top is a sizable gap. At the top here, you can see in the silver class, it's 1 point is the difference between Roxanne Marshall, your championship lead on 135 for 24-hour punty people, and Luke Andrews for FR20 Sim Racing Purple. It's come to this point with Marshall really bouncing back during the latter half of the season, and Andrews had an unfortunate retirement last time out when he was on course to win the feature race at Suzuka, and that has moved the momentum into the centre ground. Now the key thing here is that Roxanne Marshall has a 10-point drop score currently in her basket, and what that means is all the points she accrues today, she'll need to improve upon that 10-pointer. Meanwhile, for Luke Andrews, he has a 0-point drop score, which means every point he scores today immediately goes towards his points tally. So arguably, Andrews is the favourite to take the championship crown here, and it will require Marshall to absolutely deliver. But there's one thing that many may not be aware. You may think back to Season 5. Who was the dominant silver class driver at Magny-Cours? It was none other than Roxanne Marshall with a double win on favourite territory here. And could we see Marshall strike the blow, which means she takes the championship? Well, we're going to find out soon. Meanwhile, in P3, David Biggerdike for DC Sim Racing, 105 points. It does look as though he's going to be yielding that P3 come the end of today, as unfortunately due to ill health will not be joining us on circuit, but I believe he will be tuned in from the YouTube broadcast. And then we do have Lewis Willesee a third point behind, and the Tresor Motorsport driver almost there to complete a run to P3 in the championship, albeit he has the pursuit of Jack Ward for Willesee Racing 4 points behind. Wayne Basson, P6 for FR20 Sim Racing, only 2 points clear of ATEC Tech Science, Alistair Hatcher, and the rivalry for P6, much like in the gold class, continues to grow, with Sean Crunley-Sosh for HW Racing of 56 points, continuing to grow in form, and can he potentially end on an even better result today with further podiums, perhaps even his first win of the season? We'll have to wait to see. And it's Steve Hobbs and Aaron Tressler completing your top 10 for FR20 Sim Racing and Tressler Motorsport respectively on equal points, but Tressler behind based on result countback. A further 12 points behind Glenn Hummerstone, best of the rest at ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple, with Night and Day Racing Steve Kershaw a further 3 behind in P12. And then we have Sean Dovey for Clicks Racing, Craig Tiddleston for FR20 Sim Racing, and Craig Shield for ATEC Tech Racing Team Zone completing your top 15. Then for the rest of the field, it's Liam Whittam ahead of Joe Pinder, with Jason Mumford and Jackish with the two priorities P18 and P19, and then Chris Edison P20 for UKSimRacing ahead of Tony Bradley, P21, last but not least on a single point. But as we come to the Teams Championship standings, in the Teams Championship, it's 197 points for Team Germany versus Avatar Racing's 181 points, and it's ever close between the two of them, with what is a 16-point gap, and both teams having held on to the lead of this championship at some point, but Team Germany having the advantage here, but Avatar Racing having a good opportunity to try and improve. Meanwhile, over limit race, and they look good for P3 now, with a gap of 22 points to Willesee Racing, and it may be that the teams in P3 and P4 stay exactly where they are after today, but meanwhile further behind Satellite Racing holding on to P5 by only what is now 11 points to Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, and the battle is on for that P5 spot, with Phillips GP a further 12 points behind. FR20 Sim Racing Purple, 24-hour punty people, and FR20 Sim Racing complete your top 10 with only a point to best the rest Tressler Motorsport in P11 as they try to break back into the top 10 come the end of today, and it's DC Sim Racing behind Tressler based on result countback. ATEC Tech Racing Purple and their sister team ATEC Tech Racing Cyan, they complete your top 14, both on 12 points apiece there, and it's Night and Day Racing, Clicks Racing, HW Racing, Empire Motorsport, Shelby Power Racing, and Ignium Motorsport who complete your top 20, with UK Racing out on -3 points due to post-race penalties. But as we then come to our circuit today, there's the championship update, but what about our track? Well, it is the Grand Prix layout of the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, located near the town of Magny-Cours, and between the town of Magny-Cours and Nevers, if we're being a bit more technical, and in the region of Bourgogne-Franche-Comté in France. This is a circuit which is highly technical, as we mentioned earlier. You can see it from the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com. Thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and the circuit maps that come with it, in the fact that this circuit does not let up with the contrasting sets of corners. As our drivers make the way across the start-finish line and in towards turn 1, they'll make the way through the Grand Courbe or the Grand Curve, and it's the double left apex of turns 1 and 2 before a downhill drop into Estoril corner at turn number 3. Named after the infamous Grand Prix circuit, and as our drivers make the way through the sweeping right-hander, they'll then head down the first extended straight in the run down towards Adelaide hairpin at turn number 5. But before that, they have the Golf Kink at turn number 4, and we expect plenty of battles into the hairpin at turn number 5. And as they exit out, our drivers will make the way up the short stretch through turn 6 at the Kink and into the Nürburgring chicane at turns 7 and 8. Two very high apex curves there, and our drivers will bounce over those as they make their way in towards 180 corner at turn number 9, a very late apex, and all that low speed control and return to full throttle as soon as possible as they then blast their way through the curve at turn 10 and up towards Imola chicane at turns 12 and 13. There, a downhill drop through 12 before rising up through 13 and up towards the Chateau d'Eu hairpin at turn number 14, and this is where the circuit now starts to really tighten up as they make their way through the right-hander, down the extended chicane straight and into the braking zone for the complex de Lycée via the Lycée hairpin at turn number 15. And there the lap concludes with the quick chicane at turns 16 and 17, and they blast away onto another lap. A limited elevation change around here. It's a relatively flat circuit, which means it's all about feeling comfortable at return to throttle and not being able to abuse road camber in entirety. But as we go racing, let's give you a reminder of the rules. And in terms of qualifying, a lone qualifying format shall be used for today's qualifying session, where all drivers take to an isolated instance of the circuit, and they'll have 8 minutes to set their best possible time, at which point when the clock strikes 8 minutes, qualifying immediately ends, overtime is not permitted, and any laps that are currently underway will be aborted. Race-wise, the race shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of the Porsche Cup, with the sprint race grid being set based on results of qualifying, and the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on results of the sprint race, with the top 8 positions inverted. Now, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements in the sprint race or the feature race. So if we see a driver come into the pits, it's either for a fast repair, which they do have one available in each race, alternatively they picked up a drive-through penalty, and that's for 17 or in fact 14 or more instant points, getting a little bit above the number there, but it's 14 or more instant points, we can confirm that. But as we get ready to go racing, ladies and gentlemen, here is your schedule for today. Timed in at British Summer Time, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1. In just under a minute's time, we'll make it away into the 8-minute qualifying session at 8 o'clock, before then heading into into our first race of the day, the round 14 sprint here at Magny-Cours, 12 minutes in duration at 10 past 8, and after that we'll be taking a brief breather before returning just before 8:30 for the grid for the feature race. Round 15 of 15, 30 minutes in duration, 2.5 times the duration of the sprint race, and then we bring the curtain down and find out who our champions are, at least provisionally, until post-race stewarding comes into effect. But as all of our drivers get set, we do look to our championship leader in the gold class. There's Philipp Hammer, albeit for a brief moment, as I think he is making his way into the pit. And meanwhile, Corey Lazarus, Blackout Motorsport New Zealand's prime driver here, making his way across the timeline as he comes roaring on down in towards turns 1 and 2, and getting himself set up as best he possibly can right now through the double left-hander. And well, for the New Zealander, can he find a way to end things on a high? Of course, we saw in season 5 how he ended on such a positive note, particularly at Catalonia, and can he find that again today? But meanwhile, we look to Sean Dobie as the checker flag is about to come out on this final practice session, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen. The checker flag is out. It's time for our drivers to make their way back to their pit boxes and kick off qualifying. As we say hello there to Matty Wild and also Simon B in the YouTube chat as well. And well, we've got a chat filling up here, and don't be shy, feel free to say hi in the YouTube chat if you haven't already. The more the merrier, and do let us know who you're cheering on today. And I can see, as I said earlier, Racing Dutch is cheering on, I believe, Luke Andrews there in the silver class to take the win. But as I try to make the way out, it's 8 minutes and here we go, and Alexander Wilfert, one of the initial drivers to make the way out the pit lane. And what can we expect here in the qualifying session? What is going to be what notches the pole lap? Well, around this circuit, it is all about feeling in control. A highly technical circuit, but there's no one right way to set up the car for this circuit, given the fact you have a contrasting set of extremes. You have 2 extended straights around here, and you can see right now Wilfert making his way down the initial long straight up towards Adelaide hairpin via the Golf Kinker turn number 4. But also later on in the lap, you do of course have coming out the Chateau de Heu down towards the Complexe de l'IC, the chicane straight run from turns 14 to 15. So if you focus the car very heavily on cornering capability and running a lot of downforce, you lose out naturally on the extended straightaways. Conversely, if you take some of the rear wing off, you'll gain on the straights, but in return you lose out going through the corners. But we've seen an interesting contrast from some drivers over the course of this season, indeed the last couple of seasons, particularly the gentlemen at iRacing and also at Tresor Motorsport, deciding to run a bit less rear wing compared to most of their rivals, which has cost them in the corners, and it's been very noticeable. But in return, they've gained a lot on the straights and been able to feel very safe as they've just powered their way out of the corner. They've not been catchable in the run to the next braking zone, and therefore the drivers who are running more downforce are not able to get alongside and put the brakes on heavy. And speaking of putting the brakes on the heavy there, is Aaron Tresor from Tresor Motorsport, overcooking it into 180. Cold brakes and cold tyres, never a nice combination, but our drivers have got to get around quickly, because with the lap time around here being just shy of 2 minutes, that means they've not got long in qualifying to try and set the best possible time, and we're already currently getting themselves set, and we will be riding on board with one of our drivers shortly for their opening qualifying lap of this session. And well, we look from Aaron Tresor to Ryan Walker, and well, one of the drivers who absolutely starred last time out, and it's only fair we jump on board with him as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. Coming into the the Grand Courbet as he makes his way through the left-hander, going a bit deep there through turn number 2, but gets the car gradually settled down as he makes his way through Estoril at turn number 3, going deep initially and turning the car through the right-hander as he now powers his way on out and all onto full throttle, heading down the first stretch. Now, as he makes his way down towards the Adelaide chicane, you'll notice here he'll try to straight line his way through Golf and let the car gradually meander its way over to the left-hand side before going on to the brakes here, 150 metres from quarter apex, and as he comes all the way down to first gear, nicely back on the throttle there, smooth application as he powers out using all the road surface width and heading up towards turn number 7 and 8, the Nürburgring chicane. Here, brake early, chuck the car into turn number 7, take a bit of the apex curve there and not too much on the second apex, as always you'll get a slowdown penalty. Now braking into 180, braking nice and down the gears gently, goes to second, goes a bit deep there but can catch the apex nice and late in second gear, gets plenty of rotation. Now powering through 10 and up towards 11 and 12, going all the way out towards the next braking zone here and looking to his left hand side for his marker. It'll be, what is there, the 50 metre board, braking at about 65 metres from corner apex, dropping it into the rise as he brings the car immediately over to the left here for the Chateau de Heu hairpin as he comes through the right-hander at turn number 14, not letting the car go too wide. There is a drop-off curve. It's not a flat curve, it's the exceptional curve over the course of this circuit as they make their way down towards turn number 15 into Lacey Hairpin now. The right hander all the way down to second gear, bring the car over to left, and then get ready to turn it into the chicane third gear. He decides to short shift to give himself safety as he mounts over the curbs, and as Walker heads to the timeline, what's it going to be for a lap on the board? Well, I believe for Walker it's not a valid lap, so he's going to have to go again. Well, that's unfortunate now. I believe he may have picked up a track limit infringement with regards to that run deep at turn number 2 on the start of the lap, but meanwhile Luke Andrews sets the initial pace in the silver class for 40.410. Marshall meanwhile half a second off with 40.925. In the gold class, Alexander Wilfert currently setting the fastest time, and that is with a 40.91. And half the qualifying session already complete. We've still got a bit of time remaining, but it does look as though for most of our drivers now, if they made a mistake and that first lap's been discounted, then they're going to have to go for it in excessive force on this next lap, as otherwise it will be a banker lap and it may not be more than a top 10. But as they make their way on down on the round here, meanwhile some big names yet to put in a representative lap include Philipp Hammer, who's currently 3 seconds off of the pace set by Andrews. But I think Hammer's been using his initial fast lap as more of a preparation lap. The same for Alex Peregrina, and also for Giles Phillips and Aroldis Jotatas. I think they're all getting themselves set, and so you may recall the little bit of a faux pas we made a couple of rounds ago when we rode aboard with Jotatas at Silverstone for what was his preparation lap, and he openly admitted it afterwards. We'd called him on his preparation rather than his fast lap, and well, his fast lap in him was 5 seconds faster. And well, goodness me, we always do have a little mistakes here and there, but that's what it's all about, and we all have fun in the Porsche Cup Series, whether it's in the commentary booth or on circuit. And as we see Hammer making his way in towards turn number 14, through the right-hander he goes in the number 1 car, and that's where he'll want to be on the grid, is number 1, to get himself the best possible run in towards the opening sequence of corners. And Estoril, of course, a very tricky corner when you're too wide on the outside, but Ryan Walker now goes fastest of everybody, 39.538. Andrews a 40.363, improves but doesn't move further up from P2. But as Hammer comes on through here, blasting his way over the apex curves, and Hammer takes provisional pole, it's a 38.379. Well, Hammer's been leaving it to last moment. He's got one more lap available to him. Jotatas there on what is a 39.332. That's a whole second almost off. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall's now moved to silver pole for 24-hour Punty people with what is there, a 139.9. Lazarus has gone P2 with a 38.909 on the overall standings and in the gold classification. So the times are starting to wind on down for drivers here, and I think a lot of drivers are opting to really go for what is the final 2 laps of this session rather than the first one. But meanwhile, drivers yet to get a time on the board include Craig Schill, who's currently not in the pit lanes. Marshall there locking up under braking into Adelaide. That's going to cost quite a bit of life on that front right tyre, having to let the car just roll away and then to prevent a further lock-up. Meanwhile, Jack Ward making his way on down through 180 as he comes through the left-hander. And currently in what is P5 in the silver class, P12 over, and it's staggering to think that right now the top 3 in the silver class have embedded themselves P6, P7, P8 in their overall standings and put themselves right and firmly in the midst of all the gold drivers. Well, that does happen as the season goes on. We do normally see some silver drivers who really start to step up versus their gold peers, and Ward will be looking to try and improve a little bit further. As meanwhile, I believe Andrews is on a fast lap here as he comes on down towards the Lacey Hairpin, coming through the right-hander. Well, he's earned to have this lap, and that will be it. He's currently gone personal best in sectors 1 and 2. Misses the apex there of the final corner, but that's not going to cost him too much. He's got it right in exit, but it's not enough from Andrews. He misses out by a 10th versus Marshall, and I think with that, unless we see somebody else improve, Roxanne Marshall has now just given herself pole position in the silver class, for as she comes on through with turns 17 18, bouncing over the curbs there, and well, currently on with a 39.9. Does Marshall improve further? No, Marshall stays on a current lap time, but the thing is, unless anybody else further down can improve, such as Aaron Tressler, I don't think anybody else is going to be usurping Marshall's pole position in the silver class. With Hobbs in the pit lane already, Hammer's in the pits, so he's not going to be trying to improve any further than that 38.379. Meanwhile, what about other drivers? Alex Peregrina making his way across the line. He's P5. There's a little bit of a wobble coming out the final corner, so his qualifying best has not been enough to get him on the front 2 rows. He'll be starting on the 3rd row at best, but that is qualifying effectively complete, ladies and gentlemen, with most of our drivers opting to retire to the pit lane. So it's the front row of Philipp Hammer and Corey Lazarus, and Lazarus right back up there again for this season finale, with Aroldis Jotatas P3 and Emil Koopmans P4. They're all gold drivers, and in silver pole position goes to Roxanne Marshall on the 4th row of the grid in P8, with Andrews immediately behind. But as the grid now starts to be set up for our first race of the day, this is how they line up for the round 14 sprint of the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup Season 7. Well, in fact, Season 6, I should say. Oh, goodness me, we're getting things wrong today. But with Philipp Hammer from Team Germany, they're taking overall pole position on the 38.379, half a second clear of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand's Corey Lazarus, with Holder Stratatus starting off the second row for Over Limit Racing P3. Alongside him, Emil Koopmans P4 for Apex Missers, with Alex Peregrina P5 for Avatar Racing. And then we have Ryan Walker P6 there for Satellite Racing, 1.1 seconds off of the pole lap, and that goes to show you the lap that Philipp Hammer delivered at a critical time. Giles Phillips starts off the full throw at P7, the gold class drive for Phillips GP, with silver pole sit at 24-hour Puntyfield's Roxanne Marshall starting at P8. On row number 5, it's the silver pair of Luke Andrews for FR20 Sim Racing Purple, and the sister teams FR20 Sim Racing at Steve Hobbs. And then on the 6th row of the grid, outside the top 10, best of the rest, it's Ricardo Jimenez, who starts P11, and he is joined by Willesee Racing's Jack Ward at P12. We then have behind them on row number 7, Alexander Wilfert for Team Germany and Aaron Tressler for Tresla Motorsport, with Wayne Basson for FR20 Sim Racing and Sean Cranley-Swash making up the 8th row of the grid. HW Racing's driver there having a difficult qualifying session. And there's Alistair Hatch for ATEC Tech Cyan at P17, joined on the 9th row of the grid by the sister team's purple driver Glenn Humberstone. And then completing your top 20 on what is the 10th row of the grid is Sean Doe for Clicks Racing and Craig Tiddleston for FR20 Sim Racing, with Craig Schill starting at P21, last but not least on what is there the 11th row of the grid for ATEC Tech Racing Team Siam. All 21 drivers in attendance here, and 20 of them getting a lap on the board. It looked difficult for many in qualifying, but as we are just waiting for a couple more drivers to take to their slots on the grid, we are just waiting for Jack Wood and Philipp Hammer in particular. Well, we are 15 seconds away from going racing, folks, and as we get set to go, well, here is the front of the grid. It's time for the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the first race of the day as Philipp Hammer gets a good start into turn number 1. That's exactly what he needs. And meanwhile behind, Lazarus and Joe Tartas going side by side, but Lazarus coming off Joe Tartas as they come on through. Further back, meanwhile, you can see side by side between Peregrina and Wes Koopmans, with Peregrina getting his elbows out nice and early. He knows he's not got time to waste. He's got to win this race. And as they make the way through 3 and down towards 5 they go. Well, further back there we do see that Luke Andrews has found his way ahead of Roxanne Marshall. It's a good start from Andrews, but Marshall close behind as they power their way through the golf curve and hang on down further still. We've still got many a driver trying to settle down, including a battle side by side machine, Sean Cranley-Swash, and where's Alistair Hatch as they head on to the brakes. But as they all come down, and meanwhile everybody now heading on to the Anchor's cold brakes. We've got cars round, and one in particular there, I believe that is none other than Jack Ward, who's looking the wrong direction at the moment. I think some drivers, they're getting a bit too hot on the brakes for the first time of asking, but as they all come through and up towards 180, Philipp Hammer continues to lead with Lazarus behind her, Tartas P3 and Alex Peregrina P4. This top 4 already breaking away to 2 seconds clear from Charles Phillips in P5, and as they come roaring on through, well, the biggest shock of them all is Luke Andrews now down to P10. He's up to P9, getting ahead of Steve Hobbs immediately, and as the field makes its way on through, here is Luke Andrews, who right now has some damage to the car. I think he may have been involved in a little bit of a bump and scrape with another driver. We'll take a look back very shortly at what happened at turn number 5 on the opening lap. But meanwhile, Emil Koopmans on the inside there, and Marshall just letting it go. Oh, bit Koopmans overcooks the corner, and Marshall giving the elbow out, and meanwhile Andrews now trying to come back at Koopmans here, and I think as they make the way down, when with Koopmans all out of sorts in the battle for P7 overall, and all the way into the braking zone they go around the outside. He looks for it, does Andrews, but Koopmans makes him go deep, and with this, Marshall now tries to take a little snipe on the inside, can't quite find it as they come through turns 16 and 17, and down towards 1 they go once again, but as they all straight line down in towards the opening corner on the second lap, it is Philipp Hammer who leads ahead of Corey Lazarus P2. Meanwhile, Harold Stratatas P3 ahead of Alex Peregrina P4, and then Charles Phillips P5 ahead of Ricardo Jimenez P6, Emil Koopmans P7, and then we have Luke Andrews, Roxanne Marshall and Steve Hobbs completing your top 10, as that's a very wide line there for Ricardo Jimenez as he rejoins it, and it's going to be Koopmans who jumps up into P6, but as they power their way down towards Adelaide this second time around, we do get the circuit map back for you on the top right hand corner of your screen, decide to hide, and we put it out of hibernation, but as they roll the way through the right hand, and meanwhile Alex Peregrina continue to make ground side by side here with Joe Tartas as they head into the right hander of what is turn number 7 at Nürburgring, and he gets it done. Peregrina absolutely bold as they come. It's a lovely move from the Spaniard, and he moves up into P3, and the Avatar Racing driver knows he's now got to pick off Lazarus, and he's got to try and find a way past Hammer as well, and that is going to be a challenge given the fact these two have definitely had some major moments over the course of the season, and at Suzuka it reached boiling point last time out, but as they make the way on down towards the Imola chicane. Meanwhile, Giles Phillips staying in a bit of a lonely P5 at the moment, and further back we've got further battles growing here between Ryan Walker, the satellite racing driver, who's definitely got a wounded car, as has Sean Cranny Swash in front, and Glenn Humberstone as well, staying close. Meanwhile, Marshall, I believe, has dropped down the order into P11. We'll try and understand what's happened there very shortly, but definitely 2 open laps. There's a lot of implications for the championships as our drivers make the way out of turn number 14 and down towards 15 they go, but Sean Cranny Swash is still being chased by Ryan Walker. And keep in mind, of course, for many a driver, they'll be looking at P8 position, because that will be pole position for the purposes of our second and final race of today in the season. But as we see our trio here of Walker, Swash, that's Cranny Swash and Shield making the way towards the timing line. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall on the inside, Alexander Wilford getting back to P10. The 24-hour Punch People driver has had one shot already at leading this race and is now trying to recover for another opportunity. But meanwhile, whilst we do have a brief lull, we will take a look back at what exactly happened on the opening lap into the Adelaide hairpin. We start off with what happened to Aaron Tressler, interesting enough, at turns 1 and 2. So something's gone wrong here with the Tressler Motorsport driver, loses the rear end by trying to overturn the car, and well, for Aaron Tressler, that's the worst possible start he could have had to proceedings today. And then later on, as the drivers made their way down towards Adelaide, so this is Emil Koopmans we're focusing on, and I believe he may have been at the front of the chain reaction under braking. Well, there's Phillips GP's Giles Phillips on the inside, Brian Walker being sent sideways, and that explains exactly what happened. Everybody else coming into the scene of the incident, and where it was Constantine effect galore. Luke Andrews there being given the elbow out, and that's how Marshall retook the lead of the class at the time. But a nasty one there, and all through, I think Giles Phillips locking up the brakes, and the inside going a bit too late. Ryan Walker being on the outside, and then we got to see Emil Koopmans just being sandwiched between the two of them. But as we return to live pictures, racing still well and truly underway, and Marshall here on the offensive versus Steve Hobbs. Hobbs there on the outside coming through the Chateau d'Eau corner at turn number 14, and as they make the way on down, well, Hobbs will try and do everything he can here to keep Marshall at bay, but I think Marshall's going to have more than enough pace, plus the inside line here coming down the chicane straight. Onto the brakes they go, the 24-hour Punty People driving, giving Hobbs the space, but gets it done there, and Marshall gaining another place as they make the way through turn 16 and 17 and on to the next part of the race. Meanwhile, going wide there, I believe that's none other than Alistair Hatcher, who's taking a bit of a trip to the grass as he rejoins the AT Tech Racing Team Sandro, drops behind Craig Shaw and Brian Walker. So Hatcher making a rare mistake as he comes down through turn number 2 and into 3, but the drivers make the way through Estoril corner, where everybody right now starting to hopefully in their minds settle down to a degree, minus the drivers who do need to keep making a bit more progress. But as all this continues to unfold, we do wonder what exactly happened to Roxanne Marshall on lap number 2, and we will try to find out that shortly. But meanwhile, we're looking here at Alistair Hatcher trying to make the move around the outside of Ryan Walker. And Walker with the damage on the car, losing some straight line speed on the right hand side in particular. You can see it from the camera's perspective. It's on the left hand side when we look at the front of the car, but from the driver's perspective it's the right hand side, and that crumpled aerodynamics there on the front of the car definitely holding back in terms of the top end. But meanwhile, oh goodness me, and what on earth has gone wrong here? What is 180? That is Giles Phillips and Emil Koopmans. Marshall just avoiding the scene of the incident. Well, more drivers coming up with mistakes here, and well, for Giles Phillips, definitely a nasty one and not one he wanted to be part of. Well, we will try and take a look back at what exactly happened there very shortly, but first we do have an update on what exactly happened to Roxanne Marshall, and here's the replay. Was they're making their way on for into turn number 14. So this was originally Koopmans versus Marshall, so the pass was made there, but we did see Marshall drop further down the order after that. Of course, with what was Steve Hobbs trying to look for the move, couldn't quite find it, and when Hobbs getting the move done later on, this was the subsequent replay, and this was coming on through the Imola chicane, and Marshall there having to go slowly. I think a slowdown being accredited to Marshall as a result of track limit, and well, that was when Marshall had to start making the recovery drive. So that explains the story there as we return it to your live pictures now. And well, we will very shortly get a replay of what happened to Giles Phillips only moments ago, and Emil Koopmans coming into the aftermath of the incident. But we're not going to completely overload you with replay footage at the moment. There is a live race ongoing as well as our drivers continue to push it around here. They're into the second half of the race, onto lap 5 of what we expect will be approximately 8 to 9 laps of racing here as they continue to power their way on around. But definitely these Porsche Cup cars, the 992s, whilst they may be more stable than the old school 991 machine, they are by no means less tricky with regards to the lack of anti-lock braking systems or ABS and traction control TCS. And as we do see there, a lock-up for Glenn Humberstone, Emil Koopmans in the end, getting quite a bit of oversteer there on the exit of Adelaide and finding himself battling sideways over Aaron Tressler, and Tressler going around the outside here, and Koopmans decides to tuck on him. But as they make the way through Nürburgring and down towards 180 this time. And meanwhile, we look from them to Charles Phillips, who has Marshall hot on his heels as they power their way up towards the Imola chicane. And now will Phillips fight this one hard? I would imagine he will be prone to fighting it to a degree, even though at the end of the day it's not going to matter too much his championship, and he won't want to fall back towards Steve Hobbs, because he falls into P8 and Hobbs passes him, then he misses out on reverse grid pole. But as both drivers make the way out to turn number 14, Marshall now definitely being stumped with Andrews 5.5 seconds up the road, and it's not over in the Silver Championship if Marshall finishes second in class to Andrews' win, but it means that the change is much greater, and therefore Marshall will need as a minimum the win in the final race of the day, and for Andrews to have an absolutely abhorrent result by comparison in order for the championship to swing back away. So it does mean that things are going to be getting tighter, and as they come on through and down towards turn number 3, I would imagine that Marshall will be looking for the run all the way down towards Adelaide here to get the job done and gain another place for trying to hunt down Andrews. Of course, you never know what can happen come the end of this race. Any driver can make a mistake, any instance can happen, but right now it does seem as though Luke Andrews, commentator's curse notwithstanding, is leading at the silver class and quite comfortably up the road. But meanwhile, Phillips there defends to the inside, and Marshall being made to look around the outside. Marshall will have it on the brakes here, with Phillips trying to hold the inside line. There's enough room between the two of them, and as they make the way through, Marshall blasts out the corner, and I think Phillips there a bit sensitive on the throttle given the state of the car, but Marshall moves into P7 overall, and now as they make the way in towards Nürburgring chicane, further back we see ATEC Tech Racing at battling galore here. Well, that's the Hatcher versus Craig Schill. Schill in front of it, it's the two Cyan teammates here trying to hold off Glenn Humberstone from Team Purple behind, and as they come through 180, we jump on board with Glenn Humberstone as he gets close, but he can't quite find a way through, and these guys are battling for P5 in the silver class, and what is P13 overall. Wayne Basson a further 2 seconds up the road and starting to clear the distance. As they head in towards Imola here onto the brakes, they roll their way down and coming in towards turn number 14 very shortly. Well, Humberstone has space on the inside there, but decides not to go for it. I think conscious of the fact there's no point revealing his hand right now. There will be another 2 laps of this race to go, given our leader Philipp Hammer's already into Estoril corner at turn number 3. And well, Humberstone here thinking about it. He's trying to make it look as though he doesn't know which way to go. And I think part of him doesn't know which way he wants to look at it. Meanwhile, Hatcher there taking a little bit of a peek, but getting a bit too close to the back of Craig Schill. And as they go through turn 16 and 17, bouncing over the curves there, well, Humberstone's spine is definitely made of stern stuff as they make their way across the timeline onto the penultimate lap. This will be lap number 7, and Humberstone takes a look to the inside but gets it wrong there, and as he does, Emil Koemans now trying to make the move around the outside of Estoril Court. This is going to be bold from Koemans at the best of times, but in the end he's going to be making his way on around. And as they head up towards Adelaide now, Craig Schill versus Alistair Hatcher, and the two ATEC Tech Racing Team Cyan drivers side by side as they power their way on down through the Golf King. But who's going to come out on top here? Well, it's currently Schill ahead of Hatcher based on the nose, but as they enter the braking zone, well, Schill's still there on the outside. Oh, goodness me, and meanwhile, sliding through our camera angle, Aaron Tresler Motorsport and missed this braking zone in entirety and taking a bit of grass with him, but as he tries to rejoin, meanwhile, Koemans here trying to get the move finished off versus Humberstone, but the two of them, neither one wants to back out as they come on through Nürburgring, but in the end, Koemans on the inside and gets it done. But as they head up towards 180, and meanwhile, we do look from them back up to Ryan Walker, who has recently found his way past Alexander Wilford for P10 overall, P7 in the gold class, and as they head up towards what is their Imola and through the aforementioned chicane, well, now Ryan Walker's next target will be Steve Hobbs, albeit Hobbs is half a second away, and I think Walker will be closing quite rapidly, and he's got one more lap to try and make the pass. It's not going to be enough, however, for a reverse grid pole. He'll need that P8 off of Phillips if he wants to do so, and Giles Phillips a further 1.5 seconds up the road. Walker is travelling quite quickly at the moment, but I don't think he's going to be able to get it done in a single lap, both of his pass, and then one more pass after that, but we'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, we look from them too. The leaders are already on to their final lap, and it's Corey Lazarus, P2 of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, with Peregrina behind, and right now, I think Hammer will be wishing that Lazarus keeps Peregrina at bay for the remainder of this lap, because it will dent Peregrina's opportunities to try and take the championship back as they make the way out of Adelaide and up towards the Nürburgring chicane. Now as we jump on board with Alex Peregrina here, the Spaniard from Avatar Racing, he'll know that he's still got the opportunity to take the championship crown with this third place finish if that's where he finishes, but the problem will be it'll be nothing less than a win that's required in the final race of the day, and he'll effectively need Philipp Hammer to finish at the bottom end of the top 10 in the gold class, practically a retirement almost, if he wants to take this championship crown. So right now the onus is definitely on Hammer to take the championship, but as they make the way on through Imola here, well, Lazarus absolutely planted Peregrina, attacking the corners as much as he can. Lazarus going defensive there. He knows Peregrina's trying to come, and they can't quite get the move done. Peregrina, they've been boxed in under braking, and in the end, it's not going to go any which way but in the hands of one, for as we do see the number 1 car making its way out of turn at number 15. He's led it from the start. It's a great launch off the line, and as he comes to checker flag, it's the sprint win for Philipp Hammer from Team Germany, and almost there to the championship crown with Corey Lazarus P2, fended off Alex Peregrina to the line. P3 for Peregrina, then Harold Stratatas P4 ahead of Ricardo Jimenez, who makes his way out the last couple of corners, and I believe this is going to be his season best performance for the Spaniards from Avatar Racing, holding off Luke Andrews to line. Andrews P6 that takes the still win for FR20 Sim Racing Purple. Giles Phillips will fend off, in fact it's going to be a slowdown I think there for Phillips, and Roxanne Marshall takes P7 in the end. Giles Phillips P8 ahead of Ryan Walker P9, Alexander Wilford P10, and Wayne Basson will round off your silver podium. P11 ahead of Alistair Hatcher P12, Emil Koopmans P13. You can see the Glenn Humberstone and Koopmans sharing the run across the line, and then Aaron Chester P15 ahead of Steve Hobbs, and will very shortly Sean Cranley Swash and Craig Schill, followed by Sean Doby, who's battling with Craig Tiddleston for P19. I think he's got enough breathing room here to feel safe to the timeline as they both across the aforementioned finish line now. That's your top 20, and then Jack Ward will be 21st and last, a lap down at the end. But all of our starters finish the race, and we head into the mid-event break here, 2 minutes, and that gives us 2 minutes to quickly recap the results from our first race of the day, and here they are. So after an absolutely brilliant 12 minutes of racing in the round 14 sprint of Magny-Cours, Philipp Hammer takes the win by 3.7 seconds for Team Germany over Corey Lazarus P2. The Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver not quite able to get close enough to battle with Hammer over the race, but able to fend off Alex Peregrina, and the Avatar Racing driver there 6 attempts away from second place, and now knowing the task or the mountain has only increased in the magnitude he needs to climb. Harold Stratatas P4 for Over the Limit Racing, fend off Ricardo Jimenez with season best performance, if my memory serves me correctly, and then Luke Andrews there, P6 for FR20 Sim Racing Purple, taking the silver win ahead of Roxanne Marshall for 24-hour Punty People. This now means that Marshall will need to take the win in the silver class, and Andrews will need to finish, I do believe, at least 4 places behind Marshall if Marshall is to take the championship crown. So it's going to be an interesting end to the racing with Giles Phillips P8 ahead of Ryan Walker, and it will be Phillips who takes reverse grid pole there from that P8 slot. Walker P9 ahead of Alexander Wilford P10 for Team Germany, and Wayne Basson best of the rest there, P11 for FR20 Sim Racing, and round off the silver podium of Andrews, Marshall and Basson with Alistair Hatcher P12 for ATIC Racing Team Cyan, head of Emil Koopmans, then Glenn Humberstone and Aaron Trester completing your top 15. Steve Hobbs P16, a difficult start to proceedings today for the FR20 Sim Racing driver, with Sean Cranley Swash P17 for HW Racing. Craig Schill behind him P18 for ATIC Cyan, with Sean Doby and Craig Tiddleston completing your top 20, and then finishing last but not least, a lap down for Willesey Racing, Jack Ward P21 of 21 starters. Well, it's great to see all the drivers making it to the checker flag, but we are now only 15 seconds, if that, away from going racing once again, ladies and gentlemen. And well, how can we follow up an absolutely dramatic sprint with this feature race? Well, it's going to have to be a fantastic feature, that's for certain. Well, hold on to your hats, make sure you're set, make sure you've got that final drink you need, because we've got 30 minutes of racing come up, and it's the final 30 minutes of the season. It's round 15 of 15 here at Magny-Cours. So as our drivers make the way to the grid for the final time this season, this is how they line up for the round 15 feature. Giles Phillips for Phillips GP takes pole position ahead of Roxanne Marshall for 24-hour Punty People. It's the gold pole sitter joined by the silver pole sitter. Behind them, it's the silver gold pair of Luke Andrews and Ricardo Jimenez, with row number 3 going to Harold Stratatas and Alex Peregrina. On row 4, Corey Lazarus and Philipp Hammer, with the top 10 being completed on row 5 by Ryan Walker and Alexander Wilford. And then behind them on row number 6, best of rest Wayne Basson, with Alistair Hatcher for company in P12. On what is the 7th row of the grid, we then have the pairing of Emil Koopmans and Glenn Humberstone, with Aaron Trester and Steve Hobbs on the 8th row of the grid. 9th row goes to Sean Cranley Swash and Craig Schill, with Sean Doby and Craig Tiddleston completing your top 20, and both looking for a stronger second race of the day. And then last but not least, starting P21 and having to make his way through the back of the field, it's Willesey Racing's Jack Ward there. After the difficulties of the first race, he'll be hoping for a calmer start at least for the 30 minutes of racing that lies ahead. But the grid is set, we are ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. We look down to the grid, and here's the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go once again for the final race of the season as Charles Phillips gets a brilliant start off the line, but as he powers it into turn number 1. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall under major pressure already and acting as a cork in the bottle as everybody comes on down. We can see that Andrew's in contact with Jimenez. Jimenez being pushed a little bit wide as they come through Estoril corner and as they make the way through turn number 3, where it's going to be cold brakes and cold tyres once again as all of our drivers power the way around, but Marshall versus Andrews, and this could be championship defining right now as they head down through the Golf King, and it's going to be on Andrews on the inside. Marshall made to stay to the outside and losing the overspeed here. Peregrina looking up the inside already, trying to get involved with the silver championship leaders as they make the way through Adelaide, but everybody coming on in, and as they do, Peregrina on the inside there and Marshall, they exit, everybody makes it through, this time unscathed, albeit a few bumps and scrapes, but they won't mind those, and as they come down in towards another ring chicane, Marshall drops the P4, Herolda Stratatas behind now. Meanwhile, further back, Emil Koopman side by side there with Alexander Wilfert. Wilfert getting his elbows out, and we'd love to see it from the Team Germany driver, who's definitely put on some brilliant battles all season. But behind, meanwhile, almost 3 wide there as Aaron Tress and Wayne Basson go side by side. Basson goes overly deep, and Sean Cranny-Swash says, well, don't mind if I do, I'll sneak in between you, and takes one of the places off of Basson. And HW Racing drive, don't think it's done yet as he chases after now with Aaron Tress as they make the way up towards Imola. But as they charge the way on through, we do bring back the overlay, and with that, the circuit map on the top right corner of your screen. But as they come down into the braking zone here, everybody again on cold brakes. But I think we've had a bit of an incident here, and that is Alex Peregrina and Roxanne Marshall causing the seas to part. And what exactly's happened? Oh no! And it's all gone wrong for Marshall. A small tap there on the side and into the path of Aaron Tressler. Well, Tressler will argue that he was simply in the wrong place at the right time to be part of the incident, but definitely there a major moment. And I think with that, and Andrews in P2. Well, let's not ride it over yet as we've got further contact there until the wall goes to Alistair Hatcher. I believe the ATEC Tech Race Cyan car being sent away, but as they all power the way across line, definitely a very dramatic opening lap here in the final race of the day. They seem to be saving it all on the final race, but with that in mind, well, it is Charles Phillips who leads, but meanwhile we continue to look back into the battle for what is P10 and in P9 as well, with Alexander Wilfert in P9 there being pressured very heavily by Emil Koopmans. Wilfert have a lot of damage on the front of the car, and I think that Porsche may have been right in the middle of that incident which we caught the end of coming on through the Chateau de hairpin. But as they head down to the brakes here, Wilfert right now putting up an absolutely huge defense in the middle of the road. Koopmans go around the outside, turns it too early, and Alexander Wilfert they're clipping the side of Koopmans' car, and Sean Cranley-Swash, he happens to be in the right place at the right time so far in this race, and long will that continue for the Canadian as the HW Racing driver has moved up with 7 places overall, 5 in class. He's currently P2 in the silver class with Glenn Humberstone behind. But as they make their way through 180, well, right now I don't think these guys are going to be believing their luck. But meanwhile, further up the road, I can confirm that Older Shatata has now moved into P2. He's found his way past Luke Andrews off camera, and as they make their way up towards turn number 14, there's your top 4. It's Phillips ahead of Shatata with Andrews and Lazarus behind. Then Ricardo Jimenez P5 ahead of Alex Peregrina and Philipp Hammer P7. Ryan Walker P8 with Alexander Wilfert P9, and then it's going to be Sean Cranley-Swash completing your top 10. Second is silver ahead of third place in silver Glenn Humberstone, but going slow there is Ryan Walker, and I believe Walker may have had a mistake or a slowdown to serve coming out of the Chateau de hairpin, and as a result he's going to now bring himself back into this battle with the silver class drivers and falls behind Wilfert. Wilfert there with a small lock up, but it doesn't seem to phase him, but it's going to be Walker who goes overly deep, but Cranley-Swash then locking up in return. They're all locking up here on the second lap as they make their way into lap number 3. Well, will there be now Sir McCarm to all the good places here as they make their way through turn number 1. Well, Cranley-Swash here defending hard. He wants to keep Walker between himself and Humberstone. You can understand why. He does not want the gold driver here to get ahead, otherwise he'll force him back. But I think Walker's going to make a mistake. There's contact there between Walker and Humberstone. They go round together, and it's getting even more dramatic here. Well, I can tell you one thing, they must have been bottoming this up for the end of the season, because this has been perhaps the craziest start to a feature we've seen all season 6 thus far. And as they make the way down, meanwhile Peregrine and Jimenez have exchanged places of P5 further up the road, and well, we've got a lot to dissect in this race, and I think now we can immediately start to get to it with a couple of replays, starting what happened between Peregrina and Marshall come the end of lap number 1. Well, we looked at Alex Peregrina as they made the way out of Nürburgring chicane, out of the Imola chicane I should say, and up towards what's the Chateau de Nevers, and then Marshall with a tiny lock-up, and in the end, as everybody else came through the scene of the instant, you'll see there it's going to be Trezzo who tries to go around the outside, but a car that does come loose there. We're not quite sure who it was. I think it was Will Furr who may have tapped the side of Marshall and then sent Marshall on the path towards what was Tressler, and that was the way that played out. And well, as we take another look back at that instant from Marshall's perspective, riding on board here with the 24-hour Punty people, you'll see running close, cold brake still, they're not fully up to temperature, goes for the look on the inside, but then just goes a tiny bit too deep. In fact, I'm not sure if there's any contact there, or if there was, it may have been netco contacts. It looked like Marshall was just millimeters away, but then the subsequent car coming across and Marshall just being in the wrong place at the wrong time on the recovery. But as we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, 5 minutes of this race complete. We've still got another 25 to go, and anything can happen before this race is over, we can promise you that. And well, as we see our drivers making their way onto what is their fourth lap of racing in this feature, meanwhile battles are plenty further down the field. The driver's trying to recover, and this is Glenn Humberstone looking up the inside of Craig Schill, as Schill they're trying to defend for P15 and what is P8 in the silver class as they come down and around through turn at number 3 at Estoril. As they make their way through the right-hander, notice how their Humberstone deciding to go for a much later apex and just give himself all the speed out the corner. Schill, by comparison, they're going for quite an early apex and almost taking to the grab-on corner exit. Contrasting lines as they head down towards the Adelaide hairpin, onto the brakes very shortly. But no change at the moment, with Humberstone too far away to try and force a pass. But meanwhile, looking from them up towards the very front of the field, I can tell you that the race leaders are starting to come together. And this is Charles Phillips for Phillips GP versus Herodes Stratartas for Over Limit Racing, with Corey Lazarus immediately behind. The top 3 gold drivers all coming together now, and Luke Andrews there just watching with the popcorn seat view as Phillips there almost falling off the road using plenty of exit curve. And as we said earlier, that exit curve at the Chateau de Nevers falls away from the circuit. It's the most deceptive curve at this circuit, whereas most of them are flat. It's that one curve which can catch you out very easily. And as Phillips makes his way through this lap and onto the next one, bouncing over the curves there, taking plenty of apex at turn number 17. Has to be careful about the suspension, but I suspect he's set the car up to hit the bumps quite hard. We're going on to another lap here. Stratartas finds itself right in the middle of its 2 very ferocious drivers, and Phillips of course looking for his first win of the season. Stratartas the same. Lazarus also looking for another win in his bank account, and as they make the way out of turn number 3 and down the first stretch once more, Andrew's just there in P49. All he needs to do is finish where he currently is, and that silver championship crown will be definitely his. But as they break their way into what is there, the Adelaide hairpin, and no exchange this time. But what we can do in the meantime, as our drivers begin to tee themselves up, is look a bit further back to Glenn Humberstone versus Steve Hobbs. And will Humberstone here falling a bit further away from where he wanted to be earlier on in the race, but now he's got past Craig Schill and goes hunting after Hobbs, and will Hobbs they're going a bit deep as he comes on through. Where's Estoril corner, but as they make the way on through, meanwhile look back to the front of the field here, and Stratartas sending the move there on Charles Phillips into 180, and will get the move done, as meanwhile Lazarus in return now behind what is Phillips there as they make the way in towards turn number 12, going on through the Imola chicane and rolling up the hill, and Lazarus backing off once more, but heading all the way into the braking zone and through turn number 14. Andrew's still there waiting to pounce, but with this in mind, we do have the opportunity to take a look back at a replay of what happened between Emil Koopmans and Aaron Tressler only moments later on lap number 2 at the start of the race. Well, this was in the charge down towards the Adelaide hairpin. Now the 3 drives here battling for position. Koopmans goes to the outside of Will Furr onto the brakes, and that was the contact with Will Furr. There's Koopmans tried to turn in, and that's the story. And in the end, everybody coming in here, really coming into the scene of an instant, and having to try and negotiate it. More difficult one there, and Koopmans deciding to go completely off the circuit to avoid any further trouble, and then being towed to the pits. And then we also had the incident for Craig Schill, and this was only months ago on lap number 4, making his way on through the Nürburgring chicane, under braking it into 180, and goes around there, the rear of the car completely coming loose, carrying too much speed. And with him also was Glenn Humberstone. Humberstone making a very similar error to the 2 ATEC Racing drivers, following one other off the circuit. But meanwhile, We return back to your live pictures, and well, it's a good thing we have, because right now, with Giles Phillips in P2, and Chitata starting to break away, Phillips here having to try and hold on to the position versus Corey Lazarus, as Lazarus looking to go all over the shop for a potential move. Can't quite find it at the moment as they come through, but he looks up the inside, and Phillips goes deep at 180, and Lazarus is up into P2, and only moments ago a similar move was made. Mike Chitata to take the lead of the race, and now Lazarus does the same on the Britain of Phillips GP, and it is right now Giles Phillips who's falling down the order gradually, whereas the peers around him seem to be moving upwards. Well, can Phillips hold on to the podium? That'll be his next target, given the fact that if Lazarus becomes unreachable, and it is going to be Chitata and Lazarus pushing one another onto the end of the race. We have got 20 minutes still to go, so let's not count Giles Phillips' aspirations out yet. Indeed, he is, well, the Masters of tyre saving. We saw that at Le Mans in round 9, and we have seen it over most of the feature races. We just has more compound to play with the later in the race, but further behind these guys, we do see Alex Peregrina for Adelaide Racing. He's still got Philipp Hammer behind, and with scratches to the front of the car. But the thing is here, Hammer's in the right spot he needs to be in order to take that Gold Championship crown. Right now, the Gold Championship will go to Philipp Hammer as they make the way of return number 1. And in the Teams Championship, I believe Team Germany will also take the crown there. With the way the results are currently shaping up, of course, Hammer and Wilfert for Team Germany versus Peregrina and Jimenez for what is their Team Adelaide Racing. But as they make the way on down the first stretch, Hammer definitely in control of this race, and Peregrina having to push on, and time is just ticking away. But meanwhile, looking from them to further down there to Ryan Walker. Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing after what has been some absolutely brilliant pairs of rounds in recent weeks. Now having perhaps one of his hardest rounds of the season, and about this way from P15. His next target is Sean Doby, P7 in the silver class, P14 overall, and with the gold driver of Satellite Racing's Ryan Walker definitely right now up against it here to try and salvage a creative result. But I think he will just focus on at one place at a time and let the chips fall where they may, as he locks up there on the brake, and with Doby going very late and Walker going very early there, Doby on the brakes. I think for Walker's expectations, that's why he's had to snatch the car out to the inside. But in return, Walker having to take evasive action, and now having to do it all again, albeit now with tyres that will be overheated on the front at least, and that's going to make the next lap very painful in terms of his relative pace. As we look from him to your race leader, golden overall of Harold Chitata, the over-limit racing driver in the 45, starting to break away little by little. Last lap, Lazarus was a tenth faster, but as they make their way across the timeline this time, well, for Chitata is a 39.46, for Lazarus a 39.54. Both drivers setting their personal best of the race, but it looks as though Chitata is now starting to settle into a rhythm. Third behind Peregrina is currently the fastest man on circuit. No, in fact, it is Philipp Hammer who is the fastest man on circuit of 39.11. But the point being that Peregrina and Hammer are lapping slightly faster than the leaders right now, and they are getting closer and closer. As you can see them there in the rear of the picture, so we could see a huge battle yet for the win in this race in the last 10 minutes. It is building up to a crescendo, albeit will we start to see a battle between Peregrina and Hammer? Peregrina defends here, and well, the gloves are off between the two championship rivals, and for Hammer, he can afford to play with this. It's Peregrina who's got to keep Hammer at bay. So right now, it's all on the Spaniard here to do everything right to hold. Of course, Hammer will not want to have any sort of contact between the two of them. We don't want to see anything like a Schumacher Hill from Adelaide in all those years ago, and I don't expect it from the pair of them. But as they make their way in towards 180 right now, Peregrina knows he cannot afford to make a single mistake, and he needs to keep Hammer behind him. Meanwhile, Hammer, all he can do is simply stay there if he wants to. He can start to play about with his rival. It's almost as if he's playing with his food, as the saying goes, in the fact he doesn't need to beat Peregrina. All he needs to do is stay right there behind him. And as they make their way up towards turn number 40 into the Chateau d'Eau, onto the brakes they go once again. Well, Hammer showing his fangs, and Peregrina very wary of them. As meanwhile, further down the order from one Team Germany driver who's rising, it's one Team Germany driver who is falling in the form of Anton Wilfert, has dropped down to P10 after an off-track at turn number 10 on the exit, and 9 coming out of 180, and the kink there catching him out as he makes his way on through. Where's the Imola chicane? As they make their way into the braking zone. Meanwhile, behind Roxanne Marshall, we haven't talked about recently, having to try and recover in this race now, albeit the gap between Marshall and Andrews, an absolutely eye-watering 25 seconds. And for the 24-hour Punty People driver, I think now it is going to be in the hands of the racing gods in terms of some fortune coming her way. But the number 26 driver has just not had the fortune in either race today so far, with regards to the way the instance have rolled, and Andrews has been in the right place at the right time. Meanwhile, Marshall, by comparison, has just not been in the correct position, albeit has been right in the thick of it. but making her way through turns 1 and 2 and into 3, just trying to find a way past Alex on Will Ferg, goes a bit deep, and as they make the way through the right hand, it's going to be side by side or corner exit, but Marshall get ahead as they exit onto the exit curve there, and now heading on down the stretch up towards turn number 5 they go. Wilfert taking a peek around the outside, but you can see that straight line speed difference, and that's the damage on Wilfert's car, really neutralising any pace he has off the corner, as Marshall going quite slowly there under braking, and I think worried about potential lockup. And Cranley Swash looking up the inside here, and the silver class driver I think benefiting from Marshall's hesitancy under braking, and as they make the way on through and up towards the Nürburgring, where it's going to be Cranley Swash who moves into P11, and Wilfert push down further here as they roll their way between the apexes and onto the anchors once more, but coming on through the left hand at 180. Meanwhile, we do look from them back up to Alex Peregrina versus Hammer. And as they head down towards where it's turn number 14, one to the break, turn number 15, I should say, getting my numbering right here. Peregrina still for Avatar Racing in that P5 position, gaining gradually on the top 4, but he's got Hammer following him, and I think Hammer has decided to back off for a couple of laps, and he's just letting this race play to a natural conclusion. Albeit I think in the last 5 to 10 minutes we may see Hammer start to build up the pace, and as many of you do like to say in the YouTube channel, I'm with you on that, it is Hammer time for the German driver, and indeed he gets very close there, coming out to the right hand of Estoril corner. We jump on board with the number 1 car. We're getting close, 2 tenths is the gap here, and closing ever more as he now gets within 1.5 tenths. He'll surely be a 10. Now will Peregrina defend? He puts it in the centre off road and onto the right hand side. Hammer's going to look round the outside as they break the way on through, but as they do, it's a defence there from Peregrina, a nice defence that comes with it, and as they power their way out the corner, it's not over yet. Hammer getting the run all the way towards Nürburgring. He takes another look, but he decides not to here. He doesn't want to push his luck as they make the way through, absolutely jumping over the curve there at turn number 7, and well, goodness me, that right side suspension can take it as they make the way through 180, but all over the back of the Spaniard now, and we're just showing those signs again, getting into his rival's head as they make the way up towards the Imola chicane. Now powering on through with these little battles there, having it does mean that the top 4 are holding their station firm at 1.8 seconds away, but it could all be part of what Hammer's trying to do. He's trying to force Peregrina to push harder and harder to keep him away, to avoid those battles and go hunting after the top 4, and could it be a mistake that he's trying to force out from Peregrina? Well, that is one full process, but as they make the way down towards the complex till I see things neutralised once more as they head onto the brakes. As they head on out of turn at number 15 and onwards towards the start-finish line, when a new complication for the Teams Championship. We do have Wilfert, who's made his way into the pit lane and has recently just exited. He's now down in P15 and it's P8 in the gold class. And as we're to understand it, Ricardo Jimenez P6 in the gold class, P8 overall, and Peregrina P5 overall, P4 gold. It is going to be close between the two teams, but I think Team Germany will still have the initiative relatively so, but their mistake from Peregrina runs a little bit wide, but 3 tenths of the gap this time, and I think it may be a neutralised moment here. But meanwhile at the front of the field, well, here is Herodas Jotatus, and Lazarus up the inside as they head through Adelaide, and well, Jotatus has not been able to break away. If anything, Lazarus has been building momentum over the last couple of laps, and now it's exploding onto our screen as they make the way in towards turns 7 and 8, and the New Zealander right now really trying to hustle the Lithuanian, but the problem is once you get into this middle section, like the infield section effectively, it becomes one way through unless you're alongside by the time you get to the corner, and Lazarus now just having to wait for the run down towards the Lycée. He'll be looking to try and power as best as he can, coming on through Imola chicane. 12 minutes still on the clock here, and that tyre degradation being a big factor. We've seen it all season around the 20-minute mark. Those who've not been looking after the tyres, they will start to feel that pain, and who is going to be susceptible to it as they head out of turn number 14 and down the hill once more. But as they power the way on down, meanwhile we look back, Peregrina, who's now been half a second of Andrews, and in fact the pace of Phillips and Andrews has very gently slanted off in one direction. It's gone into the direction of being towards the 40s now versus Peregrina and Hammer in the mid 39s, and with Andrews and Phillips it's high 39s at the moment, but Andrews looks so strong in there as he clears turn 16 and 17, and Peregrina is going to be making his way on the inside here. Now the FR20 SimRacing purple driver does not need to be involved in this battle, and Andrews there being extremely sensible. He just lets the Peregrina pair of them go on the outside of the Grand Curve, or the Grand Curve, and as he makes his way for Estoril, the FR20 SimRacing purple driver knows that after Suzuka, he doesn't want any unexpected drama if he can help it. Of course, it's to the racing gods, but the number 59 machine right now just needs to stay in the lead of the silver class here. He has got an absolutely huge gap of what is 26 seconds to Aaron Tressa in P7, the next car behind, second place in silver class. So for Andrew, he does not need to push his luck whatsoever. Meanwhile, Ricardo Jimenez making his way out of turn at number 3, and as they make the way onwards towards what is the Adelaide hairpin, all side by side between the two of them, but meanwhile Lazarus has found his way past Tartas off camera, but we continue to watch this battle between Jimenez and Tressa as they make the way down. Jimenez on the inside. I think Tressa here will think about cutting it back, but then goes overly deep himself, and if anything, Jack Ward now will look at this and think, can I get involved as well, as the Tressa Motorsport and Willis Racing, a pair from sister teams, make the way up towards the Nürburgring chicane, but Ward not close enough to pounce. Instead, he's got to wait for a bit later on this lap, if not the next one. But whilst that was happening, we take a look back at the overtake that happened for the lead of the race between Corey Lazarus and Haroldas Tartas, and here it is on a replay camera, albeit before we cut to that, Ward going overly deep there. Marshall tries to get the move done, but overcooks it on corner exit on 180, and therefore Marshall has to stay behind Ward for now, but we get a replay of the battle for the lead. And this is in the run through Nürburgring. I think that may have been track limits there for Joe Tartas. Yes, it was. He missed the apex line there of turn number 8, and therefore had to take a slowdown and opted to do it under braking through 180 and let the car go deep. It's not track limits, that runoff area. The track limits are beyond the runoff area at 180. So therefore the over limit racing driver just decided to open up the corner, putting a bit of dust and gravel on the tyres, which has come off of the gravel patch and onto the circuit naturally through wind. But in return, the Lithuanian there just simply letting the move go. But as we return to the live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, well, meanwhile, Peregrina versus Hammer, they continue to make the way through the right-hander of Adelaide here, and I can see a number of you right now who are cheering on Luke Andrews, and now starting to mention about the fact he's thinking of bringing it home, and also hoping he's fed the hamster in the route in preparation, a recall to the technical issues and the disconnect from Suzuka's feature race. But I can also see there we do have Jack Wynn, who wished everybody good luck, guys and girls, come the start of the first race of the day, and also a number of you commenting about the contact between drivers, and well, a nice parallel there from Simon B to say last BTCC race of the season vibes. Indeed, if you watch British Touring Car Championship, when it's the final race of the season, round 30 of 30, it doesn't normally get a little bit close contact in what is a semi-contact motor racing sport. But as they make the way on through turn number 14 and up towards turn number 15, meanwhile, further complication, that's Ricardo Jimenez, who has gone off there as he reverses, and that's going to be onto the exit curve of what is there, the Nürburgring chicane, if my memory serves me correctly, and Walker comes up behind Jimenez with a nasty knock to the tyre barrier, and well, what exactly happened we'll find out very shortly. But the number 41 driver definitely coming away with some bruises there, and meanwhile Walker trying to gain ground, and this could be an opportunity for Walker to take P6 in the gold class and P11 overall as they make the way on for Imola, but not to be right now for Walker, or is it? Walker looking to the outside here, and Jimenez going slowly, I think trying to get the car settled down. Walker will go on the inside, he'll go deep, and that all comes down to who got the best traction off the corner. Walker using all the road width there to try and straighten the steering wheel. Meanwhile, Jimenez tucks in behind. He has not got the speed here as the Avatar racing driver, and the satellite racing machine takes the spot, defends in the middle of the road. Jimenez overcooks it under brake and has to let the car go wide to avoid contact, and Ryan Walker gains another place, and now he just needs one more and he'll be inside the top 10. But the problem for him is the next time Sean Cranley Swash is 8 seconds up the road, and with 7.5 minutes remaining, that's going to equate to what is approximately another 5 laps, including the one they've gone on to. And I think Walker may be against the odds to be able to do it, given the relative pace between himself and Cranley Swash. They are practically even based on their current telemetry. But as we look from them back up to P3 driver Giles Phillips, he's now got Peregrina behind him, or the Phillips GP driver here. It's been building pressure, he'll want to hold on to this podium, and we saw a brilliant battle between these two earlier in the season, and plenty so at Le Mans. But as they make the way into the corner, Peregrina really forces the door open, and well, Peregrina having to get his elbows out, and you can understand why, because the the only way he can get the championship is by winning this one. He's going to have to pull out all the stops. But I think Phillips here making sure he's going to have to work for it as they come down into light C. And as they do, both drivers go deep. And Phillips has to just avoid going to the gravel. But Peregrina gets the move done. But I don't think he's going to be making friends with Phillips anytime soon. And indeed, that may be a few stern words afterwards in terms of almost being forced off the racetrack. But as they make the way through turn at number 1, well, right now, definitely all the straws have been pulled out. And Alex Peregrina doing everything he can. And you can understand his mental state right now. He'll be looking at that rear view mirror, or trying not to look at it. But every time he does, he will see the car of Team Germany absolutely obnoxious in the rear view mirror. It's simply saying one thing: whatever you do, the inevitable is coming for you. And as they make the way down towards turn number 5, in towards the braking zone, it's going to be Phillips on the inside here. He locks up, and it's going to be contact with Hammer, but it's a gentle bit of contact. But Andrews comes storming into the side of what is there, Phillips, and he avoids most of the contact. It is a brush and graze in the end, but the FFSA SimRacing Purple Drive doesn't need any more contacts like that. And I can imagine right now, down in the garage, the pit crew and indeed the team principal are going to be absolutely screaming at their monitors for the simple reason, telling him, you don't need to be part of this. You've got 28 seconds to the next car in class behind. Just get the car home. But Andrews here, he's got the racing spirit inside him, which is there's places to be gained. He will gain them, and that's what we always love to see. But Phillips right now been pushed back to P6 as a result of it. And as they make the way up towards turn number 14, meanwhile we look back to Craig Shield, who continues to chase down Alexander Wilfer as they make the way onwards towards what for them is the Adelaide hairpin, and Wilfer continue to battle to hold on to P15. It's the battle of the gold and the silver driver as they come on through, and will Shield have a great moment of trying to get the cut back, albeit preceded by a small lockup. And I think they're just robbing him of the momentum he needed in order to be able to get this done. But meanwhile, for Jimenez, we're hearing there's been another incident as they head on around, and for Jimenez, he's going slowly again in the run to 180. And I think the Nürburgring chicane has struck twice to the 41 driver. And in fact, we do have a replay of what exactly has happened. Making his way on through behind Ryan Walker, turns in, oh goodness me, and that is not the way you want to hit the curb at turn number 7, and the car gliding to the barrier, and that's what happened the first time round as well for the 41. So Jimenez there getting away with what was a very close shave to the barrier, just a light bump to it in the end, but the car will definitely be feeling that through the suspension rods after hitting the curb straight on. But that goes to show you can cut these curves quite a bit, but cut them too much and they'll come back to bite. And Jimenez being launched there at turn number 7, but as we return to the pictures, continue to hold on as they make the way on around. Meanwhile, we look to Jack Ward, trying to hold on to the final spot on the silver class podium, and will there Roxanne Marshall behind. I think she realises now that the possibility of trying to take the championship crown's not there anymore unless Lady Luck intervenes, but she's going to go for it all the same as they make the way down towards turn number 4. Cranley Swash there behind as well, so we've got a three-way fight for the final podium spot in the class of the day. And as they head up towards what is turn 6 and 7, we'd just like to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, and we should have said this a few moments earlier, but the intensity of the racing, you can forgive us surely, that if you do have a brief moment, you can vote for your driver of the day using the link available in the YouTube chat as provided now, and we'll do let us know who has been your driver of the day, whether it's been for a brief moment of the race or all the racing today, whether it has been one of the championship contenders or alternative driver much further down the pack. Do cast your vote and let us know who your driver of the day is. Votes close as of midnight tonight, British Summer Time or UTC +1. But meanwhile, that Peregrina goes round. We look away for a brief moment to talk about driver of the day, and it's not his day, the Spaniard, and it's all come to a close here with Jimenez having to be towed to the pits after that contact with the wall at the exit of Nürburgring for the second time. Peregrina has gone around, and I think we can get an immediate replay of this. What exactly happened? Making his way over the curve there of 17 and just dips the tyres to the grass, and it causes the car to come loose. Hammer takes evasive action there, seeing that Peregrina is a passenger in his car, and that Alex Peregrina is literally yards away from what could be a championship crown, and it's all gone wrong in the final round of the season for the Avatar Racing driver. Well, as he gets himself back up to speed, and we return to live pictures, ladies and gentlemen. We've still got 2.5 minutes to go. Don't count anything out yet. Anything can happen yet. We're hoping it's not going to be the equivalent of Derby Gate from 2021. If you're a Formula 1 fan, we're not looking for something like that to happen, but it could be anything right now as time continues to trickle on down here in France. And as we do see Craig Shield looking up the inside of Wilford, finally making the pass count for P14. Meanwhile, we look from from them to Marshall, who's in contact again with, what is this time, Jack Ward and the two coming together. And with that, Sean Cranny Swash is just going to simply come through to take P3 in the silver class. I don't think he's going to quite believe this. I don't think anybody can believe this right now. It just continues to astound us. And what exactly happened there between Marshall and Ward? Well, we can get a quick replay very shortly, but time trickling on down here. We're waiting for it, and here it is. This is what happened between Marshall and Ward only moments ago. They made the way out to the corner. Woods come across and clip the rear bumper of Marshall by the looks of things. And well, there, I think tied arms and legs have just called out one or two drivers. And I think Ward may be kicking himself for that one after, based on the camera angles we've seen. But definitely the 24-hour punty people machine of Marshall has been in the thick of it non-stop. But as we look back to live pictures of Cranny Swash making his way on down towards what is turn at number 15. 1 minute remaining on the clock. Corey Lazarus, meanwhile, making his way out of what is, I believe, turn number 6. In fact, we can look to Lazarus here as he comes on through the Nürburgring chicane. And well, I think with the time remaining, we're not going to get another lap. We're going to be close for another lap. We are already, we're 6/10 of the way around this lap, so it will be marginal. But could we see a 19th lap here? And Tratatas is now starting to close back up to Lazarus as they make the way inwards towards what is there, the Imola chicane. I'm hearing that Roxanne Marshall is into the pit lane for repair work on the car after the shunt to the wall. But as Lazarus here holds the racing line, Tratatas goes in very aggressive there under braking. Well, 15 seconds to go. We will not get another lap. This is the final lap. It's the 18th and last one here today in France. And as they make the way down the hill, well, Lazarus leads here, and it'll feel as though it's been a long time coming for the Black Hat Motorsport New Zealand team to be on the top step of the podium. It's been a well-controlled race. He clears the apexes and he comes to line. Corey Lazarus wins in France ahead of Holders Tratatas in the feature race. Philipp Hammer will come through to P3, and with that will be crowned your gold champion with a successful title defense at season 6 of the Porsche Cup. And Luke Andrews takes the silver win, P4 overall, and he will be your silver champion for the season for FR20 Sim Racing Purple. Meanwhile, Giles Phillips makes his way on through for P5 there for Phillips GP. Alex Peregrina P6 in a valiant effort, and then it will be Aaron Tressler, the next driver to come on down, as he makes his way into the braking zone here for the Complex de Lycée. Well, he's not going to believe how this race has played out. And now in P2 in the silver class. Well, this is definitely going to end his championship campaign on a top 5 finish overall in the season. But as he comes on through there, the Trezor Motorsport driver takes second place in the silver class. And Sean Cranny Swash makes another podium, third place for HW Race there in the silver class. The Canadian astoundingly strong today. With then Ryan Walker P9 there for Satellite Racing. And he's been up and down the field more times than many, as we see Alistair Hatcher then coming across the line at P4 in the silver class, P10 overall ahead of Sean Dovey, who takes his best performance of the season, P5 in the silver class, P11. Jack Ward comes on. Well, in fact, Jack Ward's not. In fact, he has crossed the timeline ahead of Alexander Wilford and Craig Shield. He'll be P12, and a frustrating end to the day for him. And it'll be Glenn Humberstone shortly, who will be our last finisher on the lead lap. And well, we've had 21 drivers in this race. We've had 2 major retirements, Steve Hobbs and Emil Coombs. Everybody else has made over half the distance. They'll be classified as finishers, so 19 finishers, and Glenn Humberstone will be our 15th and final finisher on the lead lap. But my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, this race has had it all. Indeed, this season has had it all. It has been the most intense season of the Porsche Cup in its history with UK Sim Racing. And as Corey Lazarus there decides to do some donuts on the grass, well, he's absolutely ecstatic, and you can appreciate why. And I think from watching from the sidelines right now, Samuel Sproul, his teammate, wasn't able to make it today, will be absolutely pleased to see that the Blackout Motorsport machine right up there once again. But meanwhile, for Andrews, doing donuts there. What is, I believe, the run onto the off of the Imola chicane, and well, for him it is a silver championship crown. As meanwhile, Philipp Hammer's already made his way into the pit lane, very focused on celebrating with the team. But Andrew's going for the spin, and I think all of our drivers there doing donuts on the grass, alternatively on the asphalt. And well, I don't think the French authorities will be too pleased about needing to repatch all that grass once our drivers have left the circuit today. But thankfully, it's in the virtual simulator, not in the real world. But as we do see Aaron Tressler making his way on through their P7, the Trezor Motorsport driver on his second cool-down lap. Well, I think he's not going to quite believe how he's got to P2 in this race. It has been a story to tell for many a driver. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the conclusion of the racing for this season. season. And as our drivers make their way into the pit lane, here are the final results for round 15 of 15 in the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup Season 6, subject to any stewards inquiries. I think there may be a few. Corey Lazarus in the end takes the win for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand by 7 attempts over Haroldas Jotatus for Over Limit Racing. Philipp Hammer rounds off the overall and gold podium for Team Germany, 7.8 seconds off of the top two. And with that, it will mean that he is your Season 6 Gold Champion. No questions about it. A successful title defense after what looked to be a very shaky start. Particularly in the first 4 rounds, it just was not going Hammer's way. But over the midpoint of the season and the latter half, things have continued to come back to him. And with that, he has been the man to beat, and he's been unbeatable. Luke Andrews at P4, their overall silver class winner. And that's what will matter most, the FR20 Sim Racing Purple driver, taking the class win. And with that, he will be your silver champion for this season. Well, Giles Phillips P5 there for Phillips GP. Unfortunate not to be able to add another podium to his trophy collection, but still great driving from him all season, and definitely one to watch out for next season should he return. Alex Peregrina P6, the runner-up in the Gold Class Championship for Avatar Racing, and just misfortune after misfortune in the last 4 rounds, including the 2 today, have seen the Spaniard lose out on what was perhaps the closest run that we have seen in the last couple of seasons in the Gold Class. And then Aaron Tressler, second place in silver, P7 overall for Tresler Motorsport, ahead of Sean Cranny Swash, who round off the silver podium of Wes Andrews, Tressler and Cranny Swash for HW Racing, a P8 there, and a stellar result. And Ryan Walker P9 for Satellite Racing. A difficult day today, but a great recovery drive in the second race with Alistair Hatcher P10 and completing the top 10 there for ATEC Tech Racing Team Siam. Vester SP11 Sean Doe for Clicks Racing, a P5 in silver, and his best result of the season overall to go with it. When Alexander Wilford P12, head of Craig Shield, Glenn Hummerstone and Jack Ward, who complete your top 15. Roxanne Marshall in the end, the first our drives to finish a lap down for 24-hour Punty People, and will be our runner-up in the silver championship. Unfortunate after what was a very hotly contested season between herself, David Biggerdike and Luke Andrews. Andrews has come out on top and Marshall will be the runner-up. Craig Tiddleston P17 there, also a lap down ahead of teammate Wayne Bassam. P18 for FR20 Sim Racing, and as we continue our way down to the end of the finishing positions, having retired 3 laps in the end, and therefore will be classified as a finisher, P19 Ricardo Jimenez for Avatar Racing. And with the results for Team Germany and Avatar Racing, that will mean that Team Germany has successfully taken the championship crown in the Teams Championship for Season 6. Congratulations to them, in a close fought fight between them and Avatar Racing going all the way through the season. Our 2 retirees will be classified as did not finish, Steve Hobbs P20 for FR20 Sim Racing, and Emil Koopmans P21 for Apex Missers, with that unfortunate incident right at the start of the race. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes all of our racing. And, well, it is going to be all from us in the commentary booth with regards to the racing on circuit. But, of course, we're not quite done yet with the fact we still have a little bit of post-show. But before we get to that, firstly, we'd just like to remind you that if you have not voted for your driver of the day, then definitely make sure to do vote for your driver of the day using the link available in the YouTube chat. Because do keep in mind that votes close as of midnight tonight, and the link has been reposted again. But also, just before we head away to get ready for our post-round interviews, we would like to remind you that if you have been enjoying the broadcast all this season and you haven't subscribed to the UKSimRacing YouTube channel, then why not do so today in order to be able to stay up to date with all our latest broadcasts. But also, if you've been enjoying all the action and you potentially want to support UKSimRacing, did you know there's a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For we are affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, uksimracing.co.uk today, of which you'll see that appear on screen very shortly, and there it is. There is a Discord link in the top right corner of the screen, as you can see there, which, why would you want to join our Discord? Well, there's 2 reasons. The first one is you need to be part of our Discord if you ever want to be on the grid with us as part of one of our series. It's a mandatory requirement. But secondly, on our Discord, our affiliates do provide some discount codes, which if you use them for a purchase, it results in a discounted purchase for you, which is a win, and it also results in a win for us at UKSimRacing because we get a kickback from your purchase. However, it's a win for the community, really, because as we are a non-profit organisation, all affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including Season 7 of the Porsche Cup, the future seasons of the GT3 League, and we have got plenty more to come in 2023 and onwards as we go from strength to strength. And do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing, but I can tell you one thing as well, ladies and gentlemen, a little break can go a long way in saving my voice, and I think I've lost my voice this season, and we will be back in approximately 10 to 15 minutes for the post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers, and today there's a silver lining to our interviews, with 2 out of our 3 interviews being silver class drivers, starting with our runner-up from 24-hour Punty People, Roxanne Marshall in the number 26, run-up in the championship campaign, and having perhaps the most difficult day-to-day in her entire season, and we'll get to find out more about that very shortly. We'll then be hearing up from Corey Lazarus in the gold class for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, bringing home an absolutely brilliant pair of podiums, including the win in the feature, and then coming back to the silver class for Sean Cranley-Swash from HW Racing, ending on a high with 3rd place in class and 8th overall, but a difficult sprint race, but with it a campaign that's definitely ended on a high. But without further ado, as we now get ready to speak to Roxanne Marshall, she's with me now. And as I say, good evening to you, Roxanne. Welcome to the interview room for your first time this season, and what's a difficult end to your championship campaign. It must feel, I have to say, it's a bit heartbreaking the way it's concluded.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a really good season, though. A shame about tonight, but I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoy Magny-Cours. I think it's one of my strongest tracks. So just to be here tonight has been amazing, and to be part of this championship and fighting with Luke all season has been amazing.
Oh, most definitely. And we talked at the start of today about the fact that Magny-Cours always seems to be a circuit you go well at. We only need to look back to your racing in what was the previous season when you took the double win. What do you think it is about Magny-Cours that suits you so well?
I don't know. I think it's similar to VIR. It's just like it's a track that I don't really know. I think it just suits my driving style particularly well, and I just really enjoy them. They're interesting tracks, so I think I like driving them more, and that makes me faster.
I see, and well, starting off on a very strong note in qualifying, it was marginal in the end, but you managed to take pole position in class, albeit by a tenth or two over Luke Andrews, but it looks like it was down to the smallest margins.
Yeah, he was only a couple of tenths behind me, which was scary because I didn't know if he had another lap to go round. So I was sat there waiting to see, and then yeah, I came out ahead, and that was a really great feeling. But he's been super quick all season, so that was like really exciting.
And I have to ask, going into the first race of the day, was there a particular approach you had in mind, given the fact that whilst you were championship leader, you had a drop score against you for these 2 rounds, and you really needed to make sure you stayed ahead of him in both races by quite a margin?
Yeah, I just wanted to keep it clean and stay safe, and you know that worked in race 1 quite well, I think. Not so much race 2.
We'll come on to race 2 shortly, but talking a little bit about race 1, keeping it mostly clean, but it did look as though from the start it was always going to be a close battle between yourself and Andrews. The two of you exchanging the lead 3 times over the race, and Andrews getting the upper hand eventually.
Yeah, he is just quick. That's all I can say. But fighting him was fantastic. And I left the door open a couple of times, and he just took the advantage.
I see. And then coming the end of that race, of course, that would mean that in the second race of the day, you'd need to really step it up with regards to battling back for the victory in the championship. But on the opening lap, it all quickly fell apart.
Yeah, there was some slower cars ahead, just causing a couple of issues, which, you know, it's fine. It's racing after all. But that was the start of the decline, to be honest. After that, everything just fell away from me.
It was very unfortunate, but still, you kept your head down and pushed on all the same. But it seems as though every time you started to build up some momentum, another incident would come your way, and not one of your own doing, we should say.
No, I was really, I was just trying to keep it clean, like I say. The whole, if I keep the race clean, you get a good position, and I really tried. But you know, sometimes it doesn't work out.
True, it doesn't, but still, with the performances from today, it does mean that you're confirmed our runner-up in the Silver Championship for this season. And when you look back, is there a particular round or moment of the season that stands out as your ultimate highlight?
Yeah, when I passed David Biggerdike into T1 at VIR, watching the broadcast back when you said that's a move that Daniel Ricciardo would be proud of, that was cool. That felt awesome, and that stuck in my head.
Oh, brilliant. Glad to hear that. We had an absolutely superb start to the season, and you've had a very positive end to the season as well. And, well, of course, are we allowed to talk a little bit about Season 7, given the fact, are you going to be on the track, or are you going to be in an admin role for next season?
I will be both, I think. Yeah, so I'll be both. I'll be driving and I'll be adminning the league. It's going to be an exciting season. I would think people are really going to enjoy it. There's some fantastic tracks coming up next season as well.
Well, indeed, we'll reveal more about the tracks, not necessarily today, but in the coming weeks as we get closer to kicking off. But we'll talk more about the date at the end of the broadcast. But with that, Roxanne, just before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a special mention to live on the broadcast this evening?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank everyone at UKSR for organising the league. Before I was an admin here, you know, it's been amazing working with these guys. Planning stuff and just like in general working with them. I also want to say a huge congratulations to Luke. Really well deserved win this season. And I also just want to give a shout out to my grandparents who have been watching the entire season on YouTube on the broadcast, and that's been really special. So this second place in silver is very, very special to me.
Oh, that's absolutely lovely to hear. Not just your congratulations for Luke in a brilliant championship long campaign, but also with regards to your grandparents, Julian. I'm sure they're absolutely beaming with pride when you're taking the runner-up spot. I know that my family would do the same if I were in your shoes. But with that, Roxanne, congratulations once again on second place in the Silver Championship. And whilst it wasn't a perfect end to your season, for giving it all at Magny-Cours, and we look forward to seeing you out of the circuit in Season 7.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'll see you next time.
All the best. So here and there from Roxanne Marshall, and Will Marshall absolutely pleased as punch with regards to how the whole season's played out, and interesting harking back to the VIR race versus David Biggerdite and that battle into turn number 1 as her moment of the season. But at the same time, the 24-hour Punty People driver definitely taking all the positives from this season forward and will be a force to contend with in Season 7, but also stepping up into an administration role for the new season of the Porsche Cup. Indeed, current administrator Matty Wild will be handing over the reins, and he has been one of the big driving forces behind this season, but we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of today's show. But coming out back to Roxanne, definitely a great performance and the finest of margins in the end, determining the difference between herself and Andrews, that championship win. And if things had worked out differently in a couple of rounds, it could have gone at Marshall's way, much like today. If certain incidents had not have occurred in the feature race, we would never have known what could have been. But for Marshall, one thing she definitely knows that has happened is it has been an absolute emphatic triumph to second, and may that act as the basis for the Season 7 strike for the championship lead. But as we now go for our first interview to our second interview, we'll be hearing from very shortly Corey Lazarus in the gold class, who gets ready to join me in the interview room very shortly, and it is going to be interesting to hear his perspective on what has really been a solid end to the season. And as we give him the heads up to join us in the interview room, he should be joining me very shortly indeed. We'll also get to ask him about his thoughts on his championship campaign, which definitely has had some highs, it's had some lows, but all the way through, he's definitely delivered some absolutely brilliant championship blows. And, well, the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver keeping his head down and carrying on all the way through. But we are just still waiting, ladies and gentlemen. I have to be a little bit patient. I believe at the moment there might just be, I think, well, in fact, he does join me now as soon as I say that. And, well, good morning to you, Corey, because I know the time zone difference there. And, well, what a way to end your Season 6 championship. A second in the sprint and a win in the feature. You must be absolutely pleased.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's an awesome way to finish the season. It was a good fun battle with Heraldus there, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you.
Oh, indeed. And, well, you absolutely took to the Magny-Cours circuit with delight all the way through. In qualifying, we saw a good start to the day from yourself, qualifying right up there towards the front of the grid. Was that the best you could get out of the car, or was there a little bit more?
That was probably the best, I think. I was pushing pretty hard and had basically no petrol left in the tank. Yeah, and Phil was just flying. So yeah, it was definitely, that was probably the best I could have done this morning for sure.
Oh, indeed. And then going into the first race of the day, and we do know how strong you can be off the start line, and it looked as though it was a good launch, but in the end having to settle back down to battling for P2.
Yeah, look, at the back of my mind, the championship with Philip and Alex was playing, so I just tried not to get too close to Philip at the start or cause any dramas with anybody else, and become a nuisance to that battle. So yeah, it really was just trying to consolidate behind Phil and do your best from there.
Oh, indeed. And in that consolidation, of course, we know this gold class all season has been incredibly tight. And whether it's the sprint or the feature races, everybody's pushing each other to the utmost. But when you're out there, final races of the season, is this one of those ones where you just, in a way, not switch your brain off, but you have it in the back of your mind to say, you know what, just give it everything now. You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I mean, every driver wants to push as hard as they can and go for the win. The fact that it was the last race of the season really didn't have too much bearing on the effort level that went into it. It's just a bit of a bummer that it's finished. It was really good fun.
Oh, indeed, and we'll come on to after the championship shortly, but going from the sprint race, a P2 finish, to starting P7 in the feature, a lot of drama happened up and down the field, but no drama for you. You found your way through and then battling for the lead versus Phillips and Jotatus.
Yeah, managed to stay clean off the line, and there was some commotion down at the hairpin, and got through that cleanly. And then Luke and Giles had some awesome pace up front, and same with Heraldus. So let's just keep the pace going, look after the tyres, and see how we would fare towards the end of the race. It was good fun.
And with regards to the tyres, in terms of the fact we normally see in these feature races, 20 minutes in they start to degrade, looked as though you kept the tyres comfortably alive over the entire race.
Yeah, just trying to look after them, just short shifting out of the hairpin and some of the other corners, keeping the revs low and trying not to spin them up, and they held on towards the end of the race, which is when we needed them because Heraldus was pushing pretty hard, and it was a good battle there.
Well, indeed, did seem to be coming on strong in the last 5 minutes, and on that final lap, taking a little bit of a sneak peek into Adelaide hairpin, but it looked so there you were ready for him.
Yeah, look, you just got to put the car in the right places when you know there's overtakes coming, and nobody wants to punt anybody off, and Heraldus is no different. So I knew that if we just placed it where he couldn't get past, then we'd be right. And it was, yeah, the last lap was more just trying to, error free. Hit the brake markers, and then yeah, hopefully get across the line, which we did. So very, very happy with that.
Indeed, another win to add to your UKSimRacing Porsche Cup career, and I believe 2 wins in your bank account for this season. And looking back on the season, and with your championship finish in the end, as we just double check it, finishing provisionally in what is P7 in the gold class, close to Ryan Walker in that battle for P6. What has been your highlight or highlights of the season?
It'd have to be the 2 wins, Silverstone and here. It's the highlight. They've gradually got quicker over the course of the year, and it really wasn't in the championship fight. Like Philip and Alex Heraldus, they were pretty much a class above. So yeah, look, if we could have attended a couple more races, I know I missed a few during the year. Maybe we would maybe been up the ladder a little bit more, but still, yeah, big congratulations to Philip on his win for the championship. He's well deserved.
Oh, indeed. We did miss seeing you out on circuit for a couple of rounds, and we always do love to see the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand contingent out there, and I do hope Samuel's doing well as well. But looking ahead to season 7 now, can we expect to see you on the grid?
I certainly hope so, mate. This season we run an Australian League on a Thursday night, which doesn't finish till like 10 o'clock. So then it's up at 3 o'clock the next morning for this one, and it's just there were a couple of rounds this year where it was just not going to happen because we're just too tired. But look, we'll do our best for next season. Hopefully attend some more and have a bit more fun, mate, for sure.
Well, we absolutely would love to see you on the grid, and, well, thank you for that. But as we get ready to let you go now, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to live on the broadcast today?
Yeah, of course, big thanks to Matty for his efforts, for his tenure running this show, and he's been excellent to deal with on and off the track. So big thanks to him. And also congrats to Philip, yourself, for your awesome efforts too, Paul, and just my teammates quickly, Sam and Dylan. It's big help through the year, so thanks very much.
Well, Well, Corey, we must also say thank you to yourself, not just for depriving yourself of some key sleep, but also for being on the grid this season. It's been a pleasure to watch you race as always. Congratulations on what was 7th place in the Gold Championship come the conclusion, and we look forward to seeing you out on track for Season 7.
Thanks very much, Paul. Have a good one.
You too. Have a great day.
You too, mate.
So hearing there from Corey Lazarus, our gold class driver there from the other side of the world in New Zealand, and absolutely delivering on the centre stage, bringing home P2 and P1 today in the 2 races, and will just seem to go so well at Magny-Cours, and we have seen that at Silverstone bringing home the win, and his 2 highlights have really been the wins at Silverstone and Magny-Cours here today in the feature races. And that's the thing with the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand crew, when they are able to make it, they really do turn up the heat, and it's not just because of hot conditions out there with regards to their season, albeit they are heading more and more towards winter time now in the southern hemisphere, but also the fact they're just able to bring the pace to the table and mix it up with the very best. And today Corey did so admirably, and well, if we do see him on the grid for the full Season 7, could we see him coming up with an opportunity to be a major championship contender? My gut feeling says yes, and if Samuel Sparrow is also on the grid, well, they'll be really shaking things up from the outset. But as we now come to our final interview for today, it's none other than the HW Racing's Sean Cranley-Swash. And well, what a championship it has been for the Canadian. Having started off on a difficult note and gradually made and reversed things around, it has been a positive end to the season, and he has definitely picked up some major results over the last few rounds. And as he gets ready to join me, we'll get to hear his story and more with regards to today as we just wait for him to jump into the interview room. And as he joins me now, good evening to you, Sean. And well, what a way to wrap up your championship. Perhaps a sprint race not to be remembered as such, but a feature race which added to your number of P3 finishes this season in the silver class. You must be pleased with how Magny-Cours has gone.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually. I didn't realise I'd hit the podium until I turned the stream on after the race and saw that I was P3. So I'm quite pleased with that. I said at the beginning of the beginning of the week that 5th would be good, because I haven't spent any time in the car this week.
Indeed, limited time in the car, and I do believe that's because you've been preparing for other endurance races that are coming up, and wish you the best luck with those. But with the limited preparation time you had, starting off with qualifying, looked as though it was a bit more of a session just to focus on honing in your race pace rather than outright qualifying pace.
Yeah, I went into it like that. I wasn't going to be hitting 39s in qualifying. I knew I wasn't. So it's all about making sure I was picking those exits out those corners, particularly some of the ones onto the longer straights. Really important here.
And going from qualifying, we saw you really have to try and cut you out from the back of the group, but in the sprint race, it did look very tight in amongst the silver class. And when some gold drivers also fell backwards into the clutches of yourself and your silver peers, it was almost as if, I hate to say it this way, but all hell broke loose for the final 2 rounds of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things with a tight, twisty track. It's easier to get in contact with other drivers, and because it's a tight, twisty track, it's hard to get back on. So the gold drivers do find themselves behind us if they come off track, and then it's just hard for them because they're trying to push through to get up to their class, and they've got to fight for all of us silvers. And it's a very much a door banging track, this one. So that's kind of the nature of it, really.
Oh, most definitely. But the experience you carried from the sprint race going into the feature, starting at what would be on P17 on the overall grid, looked as though you're going to be fighting from the back of the field through, but a lot of incidents on the opening 2 laps very quickly pushed you up into the top 10.
Yeah, unlike the first race where I got a bit of damage into the hairpin on the first lap, I was managing to stay clear of it all. Had a couple of door bangs with a couple of people, but everything seemed to happen far enough ahead of me that I was able to get round it. But there we go.
Oh, indeed. And as time went on and more drivers seemed to fall off the circuit or make mistakes or be involved in incidents, we saw you come close to a couple of those incidents, particularly on what was the penultimate lap between Roxanne Marshall and Jack Ward. You were running P4, well, in fact P5 in the silver class at the time, and then you just seemed to naturally inherit the positions.
Yeah, that was a shock really, because I could see them battling, and what was happening, I was looking at my lap times and we were losing half a second, a second and a half, another second, lap after lap there as we were being slowed up behind the slower car. Roxanne went for a move on the outside. It looks like she was clear, and all of a sudden they just came together and went off into the wall. So lucky for me, unlucky for the two of them, because they were fighting for the top 3 places in the championship.
But at the same time, where some felt, you were able to rise and get onto the podium once again. And I'd like to think that's really been your story of the season, in the fact that over Season 6, we saw you in the first couple of rounds really battling inside the lower portion of the top 10. But as time has gone on, the pace has continued to grow, and you've been battling for top 5s and then for a couple of podiums as well. When you reflect on your season on a personal level, are there any particular highlights or anything that stands out in particular?
It's just my progress with the car, really. I've only ever driven this car at Nords before this season. Obviously, 1 or 2 races here and there over the last couple of years, but this is the first season I've properly gone into the Porsche Cup. So at the start, I've come from GTE, so the cars operate completely differently. So I had to get used to that for the first half of the season, and the pace has gradually come. I've kind of plateaued now with the Porsche Cup. I'm going to do Season 7. Next season, so see where I can go from there. But I don't think my league focus is going to be in the Porsche Cup next season. I'll move on to something else.
Well, that's absolutely fair, and we do look forward to seeing you out on track for Season 7, and what a way to conclude your campaign with a P8 finish in the silver standings and only 10 points off Wayne Bassett in P7. Will you be looking to go a little bit higher in Season 7 and perhaps try and sneak into the top 5 come the end?
Well, that's the hope. I'm hoping that I don't get pulled into gold, because I've heard rumours that if you're approaching 3 KIR, you generally get pulled into gold. I don't think my pace is anywhere near that, and I'd end up fighting with the same people I'm fighting now with just a different class. So hopefully I'll stay in silver, and I can make a top 5 finish next season. Also on next season, I'm changing teams. I'm not going to be with HW Racing next season. 24-hour punty people have asked me to join them for Season 7, so I'll be doing that as well. So you'll see 2 of those liveries on the track, hopefully.
That'll be absolutely brilliant to see you partnering up with Roxanne Marshall in the season. I think you two could be a lethal pair in the silver class for potentially taking major team championship points from round to round. So one for us to look out for. But just before we let you go, Sean, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
I just want to say thank you to the guys at UKSR. I've been there and I've done it before with you guys doing the admin side, the stewarding side. It's a lot of work. You put a lot of effort in, and yeah, thanks to Matty for his last season here, and hopefully Roxanne can have a great season adminning next season.
Well, Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Congratulations on your performances today, particularly your podium in the feature race. We look forward to seeing you out of the circuit for Season 7 in a few weeks' time. But until then, we wish you all the best as always.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thank you for doing it all season. It's great again.
It's been a pleasure. Have a great evening.
You too.
So hearing there from Sean Cranny Swash, our final interview of the day in the silver class, racing for HW Racing for the final time this season, and come Season 7 we'll see him racing under the banner of 24-hour punty people, and quite appropriate that we should mention the team given the fact we see here in the replay footage currently Cranny Swash chasing after Marshall in the aforementioned 24-hour punty people machine. But what a campaign it has been for Sean, in the fact that he has gradually risen, and he said it himself, the progress he has made in the car from the start of the season to the end has been his highlight, and we've noticed it, and I think we've all looked out for it over the course of the 15 rounds, where he's moved from gradually battling inside the top 10 to battling for top 5s and having the outside chance of podium should things go his way. And well, today he was in the right place at the right time to be battling for the top 5 in this feature race, and then eventually picking up the podium that came to him when Marshall and Wood came together on the penultimate lap. And that is a story, and perhaps one of the stories of the season. But as we come to the end of our interviews, you've heard from the 3 interviews. Starts off with Roxanne Marshall in the silver class only moments ago for 24-hour punty people. We then heard from Corey Lazarus in the gold class for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand. And then we've just heard from HW Racing's Sean Cranny Swash in the silver class. Congratulations to all 3 of them for their performances today, and also for their respective championship campaigns. And thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room for the final interviews of the season. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, just before we get get ready to wrap up, it's only appropriate we now take you through the provisional championship standings after 15 of 15 rounds. Of course, these standings have not been validated based on any stewarding decisions, so they are provisional. But as we start up with the gold standings then, we can see that Philipp Hammer taking the win by what was there 196 points to 165 in the form of Alex Peregrina. The Avatar Racing driver in the end not quite able to take Hammer all the way to the distance, but it was close between them over all of the season. And well, for Hammer in particular, it is a championship campaign not to be forgotten. He was pushed all the way, but in the last 4 rounds he was able to make things go his way. Meanwhile, for Joe Tartar for Over Limit Racing, it was all about staying in the fight with the top 2, but in the end falling slightly by the side in a couple of rounds, and it just cost him dear, but definitely kept Hammer and Peregrina honest when they were not on their A game, and the Over Limit Racing driver in the deserved P3. Heckenrustad not in the 10th today, rounds off the top 4 there for Ignium Motorsport, 122 points, with Cameron Willesee P5 for Willesee Racing, and then it was Ryan Walker who finished a further, what was in total at 26 points away from the top 5, but the Satellite Racing driver holding on to P6 ahead of Corey Lazarus for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, and Giles Phillips for Phillips GP ahead of Ricardo Jimenez and Emil Koopmans for Avatar Racing and Apex Missers respectively. But that's how the goal standings finished in the end for the top 10 we've mentioned, and outside the top 10, Alexander Wilfer, Samuel K. Sproul, Chris Cole, Lee Holmes, Joe Newman and Rob Selby. As we come onto the silver class, we can see Luke Andrews in the end taking the win with 172 points to Roxanne Marshall's 147, and the FR20 Sim Racing Purple driver having things go his way from the outset and indeed nailing it in the races with the pace to match Marshall, and congratulations to him. Marshall the runner-up, the best part, 42 points clear of Lewis Willesee, the Tresla Motorsport driver there, holding on to P3 based on result count back ahead of Jack Ward. That's how close it was for P3, with Ward just missing out on the top 3. Of course, we'll have to wait and see with regards to any shooting, and David Biggerdike as well, P5 there for DC Sim Racing, 9 attempts today, and therefore effectively dropping to P5, albeit that will be cross-checked. Alistair Hatcher, P6 for ATIC Tech Cyan, in a great performance to hold off Wayne Basson, P7 there for the FR20 Sim Racing driver, and then Sean Cranny Swash, P8 at the end of the day for HW Racing, head of Aaron Tressler, and the Tressler Motorsport driver being followed up by Steve Hobbs, who round off our top 10. Outside the top 10, Best the Rest Glenn Humberstone, followed up by Sean Dobie, Steve Kershaw, Craig Schill, Craig Tillerston, Liam Whittingham, Joe Pinder, Jason Mumford, Jack Isherwood, Chris Eddersford and Tony Bradley. And as we come onto the team standings, lastly but not least, we can see it was Team Germany who have taken the crown, 227 points, 24 points clear of the 203 of Avatar Racing. But again, much like with regards to the Gold Class Championship, these two teams kept each other honest all the way through, and always the outside influence over limit racing in P3 on 177 points. P4, Willesee Racing out on 133 at 33 clear of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, who in P5 will feel as though they could have been P4 if not P3 if they've been able to make more rounds, but still one for them to come back from in Season 7. Satellite Racing battling to a P6 there ahead of Phillips GP, and FR20 Sim Racing Purple finishing ahead of 24-hour Punty People and Tresla Motorsport completing the top 10. Best the Rest 2 points behind FR20 Sim Racing P11 ahead of DC Sim Racing, who just finished ahead of ATEC Tech Racing Team Sign by result countback. HW Racing ahead of ATEC Tech Purple based on result countback as well. And it was Clicks Racing, 9 Day Racing, Empire Motorsport, Shell V Power Race Team and Ignium Motorsport completing the top 20 with UK Sim Racing P21. But those are the provisional final standings of the season, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, well, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, perhaps you want to be on the grid for Season 7, alternatively you want to know more about our other series that are upcoming or alternatively ongoing, well firstly you can always check out our official website, that's at uksimracing.co.uk. You saw that appear earlier when we talked about how you can potentially support UK sim racing, or if you don't want to go to our website but you want to follow us on social media, well the best way to do so would be via our Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/UK UKSimRacing_. And we can keep up to date with all the latest episodes and escapades of UKSimRacing's esports teams on our official Twitter. We'd also like to say a big thank you to our affiliates, and those include Swillermeadows Sim Racing Coaching, and well, the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist. Swillermeadows Sim Racing Coaching can help take your sim racing driving to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swillermeadows has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swillermeadows being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide, so no matter what your level or discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realize your virtual or real-world motorsport ambitions. We also have SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing-related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports. And with in-house engineering and production facilities which combine Dutch design and high-end craftsmanship, SimLab is the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. And lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to one-click shopping, Amazon Prime, and Amazon Web Services. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we turn our attentions to what lies in wait next time. And well, Season 7 is only a month away. That's right, we can see a number of you asked about it in the YouTube chat, in particular Nikki Bassam. But yes, Season 7 will be seeing the Porsche Cup come back in full force, and it all kicks off again on Thursday, the 22nd of June, 2023. The leadership in terms of the administration may have gone from Matty Wild, and we must say once again a huge thank you to Matty Wild for all the effort he has put in to bringing the Porsche Cup to where it is today. Indeed, without him, we would not be standing on the high mountain that he has erected following the end of Season 6. And well, I think I extend the gratitude of everybody down the paddock, and indeed in what is there, the YouTube chat, all of you tuning in. We will see Roxanne Marshall take the reins, but she'll be supported by the grid and also by the wider UKSimRacing admin team. And I'm very pleased to say as well, ladies and gentlemen, that I'll be back in the commentary booth for the entirety of Season 7. It will be my pleasure to bring it all to you live for the most part. There will be a couple of rounds, including the season opener, where it will be post-round. But I can promise you one thing, Season 6 has been a phenomenal season. And if we can top it in Season 7, well, I think I am going to need a body double on standby, because that's the level of the racing we've seen all season, and well, I'm not quite sure how I still have a voice left, but we've got plenty to look forward to. Save the date, it is Thursday the 22nd of June 2023, and that's when we get racing underway, and that's when you'll want to be on the grid. But if you're not going to be on the grid and instead you're going to try and tune in live every time, well, the rounds 1 and 2, it will be a post-round broadcast, and it will be brought to you on Wednesday the 28th of June, so save that date as well. But until then, we've been UKSimRacing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And now we must bring the curtain down on Season 6, but thank you for enjoying it all the way through from start to finish, and congratulations to our championship winners and every driver on the grid for making it special. But until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.